right. Well, welcome to That Influence. Another great episode. We have a little good news and a little bad news. The good news is we have a special guest with an interview to talk about the starting and continuing and like pretty much the head mod, I would say, currently the most active admin that's there. Usually there's some others, but at the moment everybody's kind of caught in life, and it's kind of understandable. So we'll be talking to her and seeing what her vision is for the group and what exactly she wants achieved by the group known as Civil Political Discourse. We got like, what is it now? Close to 4,000 members.
I think so. Last I saw, yeah. And we
Yeah,
actually
so
have quite a few active members as compared to other groups. So it's pretty exciting.
yeah, it's a fun group. But the sad news is that my partner in crime, Juju, has decided that with life and the way that he's, all the things he's got going on and all the stuff that he's juggling, that he can't really keep up with the current events as much as he'd like to be able to really discuss on the podcast without feeling like he's just getting beat up because he just doesn't know the facts of his side, if that makes sense. Not that his side is not a good argument, and he just said that he decided that it's time to just go on ahead and move on. But as always, we respect Juju, so we got to say goodbye. Another good news, I've decided that anonymity is kind of stupid. So Badger, the guy formerly known as Badger, will now be known as Daniel Burdett, and I'm going to reveal who I am. But let's just jump into the interview now that we've got all the business off the table. So I want to start with the highest voted question, and we're going to kind of move down the list. The number one question was, of course, asked by the number one person, yours truly. What are some of your favorite discussions that you have had on CPD?
So there's two categories of favorites. One is where I participate, and those discussions tend to be reflective of my experience or the experiences of my loved ones. So often has to do with immigration. I'm a first generation American. Also has to do with people using tools that are available to them to pull them out of perhaps a cycle of poverty that's been instilled in their family. I also really appreciate discussions that have to do with women's rights and challenging a lot of the social behaviors around women's roles, especially in male-dominated fields such as what I work in. So those are the ones I enjoy participating in and actually getting involved in. But there's also another category that I really appreciate simply reading and learning about. And that has to do with experiences that I have not gone through myself. So a lot of times, like especially with immigration, my family came over here not under duress, but some families do come over here under duress and in stressful situations. I really appreciate hearing their life stories. Other people who have moved through society differently than me. There's certain exposures to understanding how the different experiences, the American experience, can change from person to person. So really, those are two different categories. Ones I like to get involved in, and ones where I just like to learn and experience and kind of get exposure to a life that I haven't lived myself.
That's real interesting. It's a lot of the same for me. I keep screaming this at the top of my lungs all the time, but I really want to understand where others are coming from. I don't think that a lot of people come to their positions because they're idiots if they disagree with me. I think a lot of people come to their positions because they've had different experiences and different perceptions than I have.
Mhm.
So it's, if you have a different collection of perceptions, the only way to find the whole outlook is to come together and look at everybody's perceptions. And
Mhm.
instead of, demanding that you be considered right, if you understand everyone, then we can come up with a better solution. You know,
I
it's just kind of,
Mhm. I read somewhere that explained the difference between learning about data and being exposed to a personal experience. And as I think we've all become aware, data is very difficult to actually change somebody's opinion on, right? Data can be used in one way or another way. We can always find data that's going to back up our experience. If somebody is really genuinely going to change their opinion, usually it has to do with being exposed to a lived experience by somebody else. And this is why when I've talked to people that only read nonfiction, they will not read any kind of novels or fiction or something like that. And for me, you have to have a healthy mix of nonfiction as well as fiction. It's fiction that's going to really help expose you to a different idea in a way that kind of leads you along a path. Whereas raw data, and especially like with nonfictions, it's going to inform you, but rarely do we change our minds or opinions based off of just information. So we really want to have an experience of both.
right. I agree. I agree. And I think that's very good.
Thank you.
Good point. Now we have another question. I'm not going to use last names just because I don't know who all would want to be called out like that. So I'm just going to drop first names here. Uh, a man named Gary would like to know, is civil discourse still possible?
Yeah. So it's we have to go in and define what civil discourse is, right? You can get into a very sterile environment of which you sit there and say, this is civil discourse, because there is no emotion, there is no experiences, there is no offending anyone. And you get in this very sterile, structured level of interaction. And then you can slip all the way over to the extreme, which is where you're just, attacking each other. So I believe that, yes, civil discourse is absolutely possible, but we don't necessarily want that extreme sterile environment, right? So the question is, which is more important, to be civil or to exchange information? And that's what I think we struggle with the most when we are coming up with ideas and rules and guidance for the group. Daniel, you've participated in a lot of these discussions where we talk about, what's civil and what's not civil, but ultimately what it comes down to is what is a platform for a healthy discussion. So it depends on what you define by civil discourse. I think it is absolutely possible, but I think a lot of people don't want the very sterile, unfeeling, ones where we wipe out the experience of somebody who may be hurt, right? You have somebody that could be walking into a situation that is personally affected by an idea that's being tossed around as almost novel by people who have not experienced it. And they're going to come in with more emotion. Somebody can dismiss them and say, well, that wasn't very polite. But when they dismiss their tone, they dismiss their experiences. And again, we lose the opportunity to learn from them. So it is possible, but if you dismiss anything that is, emotional, anything that carries any kind of personal energy with it as being uncivil, then I think that that is a little bit more difficult to achieve, because I don't know if anybody wants that. Did I answer the question, or did I just talk about a lot of random things, Daniel? I need some help here.
Well, yeah, I think that, there's definitely a line. And I think there's an issue of, we don't want people to kind of feel like, if somebody's saying something, negative, like if somebody's saying something really, really, really bad, obviously, like report it. We'll talk about it and we'll see what we needed to do, obviously.
Right.
But the thing about it is I think a lot of people have to realize too that if you're going to get anyone on your side, you're going to have to talk to people who are not on your side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and to be honest, if someone is not making the effort to understand you, how much effort are you going to make to understand them? You
Mm-hmm.
know, and you have to think about it that way. It's like, you know, somebody shouts out something and you're like, that makes no sense. What you need to do at that point is say, hey, I don't understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe this guy has a good idea. He's just not articulating it in the best way, or she, either way. But the point being is like sometimes some people just aren't that good at articulating their thoughts. Try to get less on people's specific words they're using and more on what thought they're trying to get out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because the idea is like, you know, it's something I've said to many people. It's like you're not. I've said it to a lot of libertarians. Really, is it's like you're not going to convert any libertarians to libertarianism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to realize that if you're talking to these guys, they're going to want you to understand what their idea is too. You know what I
So
mean?
yeah, you've hit on something that I think is missing the most from when we talk about civil discourse as in the actual exchange of ideas. And you say like we can't convert people that are already on our side, but we also need to show empathy. So I often, when I have a viewpoint that goes against my own, no matter how horrific it sounds, a lot of times I take a step back and I wonder, okay, if I'm going to assume that this is a reasonable person, which I'm assuming, you know, that's just how I have to go into these discussions. How in the world could a reasonable person come to this, you know, horrific conclusion? And a lot of times, if I put myself in their shoes and I try to see what they see and get myself exposed to what they're exposed to, it looks a lot different. So one of the reasons why we love talking to our own side is because there are certain things that we don't have to explain. There are a lot of things that are just assumed to be true. And a lot of that is shared experiences. So when we reach across and we try to understand somebody, we try to interact with somebody else that is not like us, the first step in getting them to understand us is to understand them, is to empathize with them, and to assume that
Exactly.
they are reasonable.
Exactly, and that's kind of my point. Is like if you kind of go at these discussions with like, well, this person's got to be reasonable. You know what I mean? Like even if
Yeah.
they're not, it'll make itself clear.
Right.
You
Right.
know what I'm saying? And the thing about it is also realize you're not the only one reading it. And if you're coming
Mm,
in there and you're just heating up the conversation,
yeah.
then you're giving ammo to the other side to see they're unreasonable. See they're unreasonable.
Right.
You know,
We're trying
and
to
it's
impress our friends.
yeah, exactly.
Impressing
So
our
you can
friends.
get your likes from your friends, and it's just
Yeah.
like, and I see it all day. I'll scroll through, and it'll just be literally like three guys of one side or girls or whatever, you know, but three people of one side on one guy talking, and then it'll be another thread. It'll be the opposite, and they're all just getting their likes from their little group,
Yeah.
you know. And it's like this isn't what we're trying to do, guys. It's not about winning. You
Right.
know what I mean? And like I said, it's about trying to think out and figure out who is correct. The only way to do that is to consider all of it, you
Mhm.
know? And at the end of the day, all of our perceptions are limited. We've only lived the life we've lived,
Mhm.
you know, and this is what the purpose of communication is for.
Well, yeah, but I also think that, I mean, I also come from a standpoint of I don't believe that there is an absolute correct. I think that when we always try to solve the problems with the tools that we have, right? So at work, I have a counterpart, and we had the same responsibilities but a different portfolio. So we just had different projects that we worked on. And it was interesting, me with an engineering background, I solved all of the engineering problems using engineering methods. She did not have that background. She solved all of her problems using her experiences. And it wasn't that one was correct or the other. And so when we go into these situations, and especially when I'm entering into a discussion with somebody that has a different set of experiences, I have to take a step back and realize that neither of us is correct, that we are using the tools that we understand to solve these problems. We recognize problems differently and we try to solve them differently. Now, there's a lot of data that I can gather to back up what I believe to be true. And there's a lot of times that I've actually changed my mind on plenty of things. I'm pretty sure that every single opinion that I have right now, at one point in my life, I held the opposite of that opinion. And
Oh yeah.
so, yeah, so I don't think that when I engage with somebody, I'm not trying to get them to yield that I am correct. A lot of times I'm trying to get them to understand that there is more to this problem and more to the solution than what they walked into that discussion with.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm not disagreeing that there's more than one correct, but that's exactly the point.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Like, you know, like a lot of times, like the discussion is like, hey, let me explain to you why my idea makes sense. You know what I mean? And like you said, there's more than one correct.
Mm-hmm.
So like, because there's more than one way to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's kind of the point. Is it's like sometimes we're at each other's throat when we shouldn't be, because it's just you're just doing the same thing in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Who cares?
Yeah.
You
We're
know?
not trying to we're not trying to take down the opposition one Facebook text box at a time.
Right. That's exactly kind of the point that I was getting at. So I'm just wanting to point out that I definitely agree with you there.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to question 3, also asked by yours truly. What are your intentions for the group? What do you feel is its purpose?
So I I actually joined on after it had started. And so I do know that it had started with the idea and the assumption that if people had a safe place of which they could share ideas, that it would help pull people out of their echo chambers and it would get them exposure to other ideas of which they can use to help challenge their own opinions. And that is my probably my secondary goal. When I joined the group, I was particularly excited to understand when I see conflicting opinions on that are held by people that don't align with me. So it's really easy to sit there and call somebody else a hypocrite because they believe in X and they also believe in Y. How can you support this and also support that? But CPD gave me the opportunity to reach out and actually ask that question and be like, hey, help me understand. I think one of my first really big wonders that I brought into the group that I posted and I asked about was, help me understand, how is it that on the conservative side, there's this big push for small government and personal freedoms. And I think I've heard the quote, they want the government to be so small that they can drown it in a bathtub. I heard a conservative politician say that one time. And yet we empower the government or systems that support the government to have the biggest influence, which is to actually decide that somebody no longer has the right to live, that somebody deserves to die. How is it that you can support small government as well as them having the most powerful force out
Hmm.
there? And to me, if I was going to sit back on my heels and stay in my echo chambers, I would scream and wave my fist and say, y'all are hypocrites. But CPD gives me the opportunity to go out there and say, please help me see an aspect of this that I don't already see. So
Right.
I personally, as a user, as a member, I love being able to try to get exposure to something I don't already understand. From an admin perspective, as somebody who wants to do this, I want to support an environment that is healthy and diverse and allows for discussion, allows for healthy discussion, not grab all, beat all. This person is right, this person is wrong, but a healthy discussion of which we can challenge ideas and flesh them out and tease them out. So the reason why I joined the group, and what I like to use the group for as a member is different than the goals and vision that I have for it from like an admin perspective.
Yeah, that I gotta agree too with the goal there, because like for me, that's really what it was. Why I joined. It's like, I'm pretty hardcore libertarian, and you know that, and I'm sure plenty of people in the group know that.
Mhm.
Um, but and there are 1.5 million Facebook groups for libertarians. We might not be many, but we're loud.
Yes,
Yeah, so
I have noticed that.
so that's one thing. It's like we do have a lot of groups that I can go into, and I can really, talk my smack and have 16, 17 likes. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And really feel like I'm smart and everybody agree with me. But
Right.
like that's kind of the thing is for me, it was always boring. And then I would go and join these oppositional groups because I wanted to learn. And then I would start questioning their ideas and get booted.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
like,
yeah. No, I've been booted from
uh,
some groups I've been booted from a lot of leftist groups, and I didn't even understand why.
right, because it's like you just start questioning, anyway, and it happens in conservative groups too. But I will actually admit that conservative groups seems to boot people less. I don't know if they're just kind of trying to, not be called out as a hypocrite or what, but they
Mhm.
do seem to boot people less. But I have been booted from conservative groups for questioning hardcore a lot of the similarly to what you're saying, which is funny, because actually when I first joined CPD, I was, I don't know, you could probably call me like a Republican. I was actually a libertarian on pretty much everything except war.
Mhm.
And that was kind of the thing. I was like, look, you gotta defend yourself, gotta, it was always a big thing for me. And really, through the group, talking to a lot of people and starting understanding and even understanding my own ideas better, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
The ideas
It does.
from my own camp
Yeah.
better started to make me go, okay, well, really, the military industrial complex is the whole shadow behind this whole thing. Like,
Mhm.
it's really the big problem. Like, why do you think they have all these, the Fed and all this other stuff? They have that so they could spend money on that. It starts to make all the things come into line, and then it just the justification falls apart.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying is that's what the group is for. Question your ideas. You're not right on everything. If you're more prepared to be wrong, you'll be more intelligent.
So I think a lot of people are fearful and hesitant of fully understanding an opposing perspective. And there's a lot of times when I think that I didn't do this well, early in my experiences, not with CPD. I think by the time I came into CPD, I was pretty good with this, but it's still something I challenge myself on, which is do I just because I understand where this person is coming from, I can even agree with, understanding where their fear is and why they're making this decision. And I can still disagree. It is okay to think, get to empathize and to understand and to still disagree. And I think a lot of times people want to put up those walls and those defenses, and they are so desperate to make the other side look ridiculous and look hypocritical, and to do all of this as a way of justifying not agreeing with them, when in fact there can be times when you can even realize that your decisions don't even align, that you are hypocritical, and you can still hold on to those ideas and sort them out. You can say, I don't know. I agree with you. Disagree on, I agree with all of your steps going up. I disagree on this other thing, or I'm not interested in this, or I don't value this. There's so many other ways that you can process information that is given to you from somebody else without dismissing them or trying to make them look ridiculous. And I think that that's one of the areas that gets missed. I think that if I was to beg and plead members to do anything, it would be to approach conversations with curiosity instead of trying to dominate the discussion.
Yeah, agreed. And, and I think that kind of answers the next question, which was, have you found any ways to encourage more good faith conversation? And I would also argue another thing too is, when you guys are talking to each other and you're having a discussion, right?
Mhm.
Try to remember to agree. Like somebody will have like a 17 sentence, or 3 paragraph long, comment there, and you disagree with one little sentence on there,
Mhm.
and it's like you're writing a whole comment about that whole sentence, and you should just say, hey, by the way, I agree with everything you said except this one thing.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? So, you know, it keeps people interested if they feel like, oh, okay, this guy's hearing me out. Whereas when you attack that one thing, it kind of makes people think that, oh, well, he's just disregarding it and latching on to the one thing that he can keep fighting with me about.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Oh, it absolutely does. And I think we both see that, and you're like, you guys are 99% aligned, and yet we've got 158 comments about the 1% you're not. Okay, but if you
Right.
guys are having fun, then so be it. Honestly, I think, and this is actually something that I think you and I probably disagree on, which is perfectly fine. I also am really supportive of getting rid of bad faith, bad actors, bad members. And I think that I have just a much lower threshold. And this is where you and I can often disagree. I know I'm picking on the 1% that you and I disagree, right? But
Right.
it's really important, I think, to understand there's times when I look at somebody, I'm like, you've been in the group for 2 months and you haven't shown any interest at all in other people or other perspectives, and then you get into an interaction with them and you're trying to guide them away from either, be it something silly like a laugh react or name calling or whatever it is, and then they push back, and you see that they have absolutely zero intention of ever being curious about anybody else. And the problem is you only need a handful of those. You only need like 2 or 3 of those to just poison a group and to keep people from wanting to comment, right? They don't want to comment because they don't want this person to jump in there and, do whatever they're going to do. We often encourage blocking just so that so that the mods don't have to get involved in every little altercation, or somebody was raising their hand and saying, hey, you told me I couldn't do this, but now this person is doing this. And now, instead of us watching Stranger Things, or, playing solitaire or reading, my romance novel that just got released, now we're spending, 15, 20, 25 minutes of our
Change
personal
poopy
time.
diaper for me.
Yeah, right. But now we're involved in the middle of this thing, and we're trying to explain to somebody why this person isn't actually name calling, whereas they were name calling. And
The
a lot
whole
of
time, why
times,
are you on your phone?
right? So it's one of those things where I know I've got a lower threshold where I take a look at somebody and I'm like, this person is going to shy other people away from wanting to speak. They have no curiosity. So no, I'll be quick to get them out of the group because I don't want that culture seeping in. So honestly, one of the best things that we can do, in my opinion, is set examples of what good discourse is, even though we're not perfect, right? We can still set
Nowhere near.
examples of good
I've taken mod action on myself.
I mean, I think we all had a pretty good laugh when one of the mods deleted like 2 of my comments, and then we had a pretty good discussion in there. And he wasn't the only one. I mean, it was just funny because I was an admin at the time. I've had my comments deleted as a member, but I've also had my
That was
comments
kind of
deleted as an
funny.
admin.
You're an admin and a mod deleted your comments. That's how we rock, guys. I want you guys to know that.
Right. So we should be good examples and we should strive for our best, and we should also hold each other accountable, which is what happened. But
and
then
like I said, honestly, it's the same as like I believe with if you have a police force, I think that any police force should be held at a higher
right,
standard
right,
than a regular person with the law, because you're enforcing the law.
right.
So it's kind of the same thing with us. Like, we should be held to a higher standard of civility and discourse because we're enforcing civility and discourse.
Right. So we slip. We're not perfect, right?
But yeah,
So we should be good examples of how to interact and present ideas. We should not be neutral, right? So a lot of times people ask, how in the world can you mod this group when you're so clearly, in this category or in that category? And it's like, well, when I'm mod, I'm looking for behaviors. I'm not looking for opinions. A lot of people don't understand the difference between behaviors and opinions, or they think that their opinion justifies their behavior. So it's difficult to explain to a lot of people, but I'm not striving to be neutral. I'm striving to be clear. I'm striving to communicate. I'm striving to present I may not even, stick to all the rules of debate club or whatever it is. But I'm always striving to communicate well and to protect a healthy environment of discourse.
well, I mean, at the end of the day, why does everybody not trust the corporate news? Because they all say they're not biased and they're obviously biased.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, I'd rather you know what my bias is. Okay. Like, you guys all know I'm a libertarian. So what does that mean? If a libertarian or conservative or someone who feels more aligned with my opinion, right, feels like they've been shafted by the group, they message me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I'm able to represent their opinion. The same way if somebody feels like they've been shafted and they're more of a lefty, they might message Mike. Or if
Mm-hmm.
they're a commie, they might message, Walt. That's kind of the idea. The idea is now you have an advocate that actually understands your opinion and might understand that maybe you weren't being an asshole. You were just illustrating this opinion,
Right.
you know? And it's like, so, that's part of the reason why we have a lot of people from different, backgrounds and thought processes. So we can go, oh, no, 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 this is a common joke. When he
Mm-hmm.
says all cops are bastards, or, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
okay. Trust me,
Yeah. Right. We'll
it's
explain
not.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's,
so I think that when we talk about what, how we're able to create that environment, be the example, then also using our tools to try to help guide people, and then if they don't accept that guidance, or if there's just no hope and we know that this person is never going to contribute to anything worthwhile, they're never going to be curious, they're never going to show interest in anybody else's opinion, then just politely remove them. There's lots of places for them on Facebook. There's lots of other groups for them to jump in and to share their ideas in ways that they would be more appreciated. So by all means, have them go to those groups and
Which
with
is
that
another reason
mentality.
why, just to defend my little piece here, like that's also the reason why I'm also really hesitant most of the time to just get rid of people, because that's kind of my thing is a lot of times a lot of people don't realize that like these extremists that exist in our world, they exist if you boot them from the group. They don't
Right.
disappear, and that's kind of the thing is like you have like we have whole podcasts in this world that have millions of views about serial killers. You want to understand serial killers, you want to get in their head, but you don't want to get into the head of people that are, maybe people that might have wanted to participate in January 6th.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Do you not want to get in their head? Do you want don't want to understand that? That like to me, I think that's very important. It's very important to understand all types of ideas because then you're not surprised when things happen. You
So
know?
one of the interesting discussions I had with one of my real world friends, who's not even a friend of mine on Facebook, one of the interesting discussions I had with her is because I was telling her some of the conflicts that I get into with trying to moderate CPD. And she being not extremely liberal, but her being more liberal than I am, she's kind of scrunched her nose and she's like, no, that comment needs to be deleted. And I asked her, I said, why is that? And, her thing was she took the point of view that that is a dangerous idea. It's a dangerous discussion point, and basically it should be silenced. And that brought up a really interesting conversation that we had, which was, is it better to silence bad opinions? And when I say bad, dangerous, opposition, destructive, whatever it may be, and, insert any other descriptive word you want besides bad, but should opinions be silenced or should they hang out there and be challenged? And so that's why we have the rules that we do. Is we want to in CPD, we want to challenge and take on ideas, but we don't want to attack people. And that's why we have the rules that we do, where you can talk. I think we've talked about the trans issue so many times. How do we moderate that issue? What is acceptable and what's
Right.
not?
And that's kind of what I'm saying is like if you look at the conservative viewpoint, right, that somebody talking about January 6th positively, right, from a liberal, hey, that could be very dangerous because that
Mhm.
idea could spread and there could be violence, right? But
Right.
like from a conservative viewpoint, they think, okay, well, teaching children some of this stuff is dangerous.
Right.
You know what I mean? And destructive. And so, like I
Right.
said, it's like the only way to change that mind is to actually talk to those people. Banning them doesn't get rid of them. And that
Right.
goes back, going back to, what I said before. It's like you have to actually talk. It's like, yes, you won't change every mind, but that's not the
Mhm.
point. You know what I mean? You will start to understand why those guys think that way. And if you understand why someone thinks a certain way, it's a lot easier to address it.
Mhm. So what's difficult though is it's really easy for us to say, okay, no, the idea should go out there and it should be challenged. And I think one of the areas that we sacrifice when we do that, one of the vulnerabilities that we rip open and we leave exposed, is that when we say, okay, we can openly discuss trans issues, trans ideas, we can openly discuss these issues that have to do with minorities. We can openly discuss these issues that have to do with immigrants or homosexuality. But the problem is a lot of times, and this goes back to something I talked about earlier, which is when somebody has a personal experience, when they have been dealing with this their whole life and they've been disadvantaged and they've been beat down by this particular characteristic, And then here's this group thinking that they can just openly talk about it like it's novel, like it's an interesting concept, something that doesn't involve them. And so a lot of times, and this is where we struggle with the group, is do we want a safe area for discussion and we want to encourage discussion. But if do we allow people, and how much diversity are we getting if we allow people to feel not safe in our group? If I want to come out and I have a characteristic that people are saying is evil, is pedophilia, is a groomer, if I have one of those characteristics, how willing am I going to come out and say, no, this is me, this is what I stand for, I have never groomed a child, right? So we want them to have that opportunity, but if they walk in, why are they going to do that? So this is that healthy discussion balance that we are always struggling with, which is if we allow opposing opinions that dehumanize these people, are they going to be willing to step in and say, no, my personal experience is this. I am the authority on this because this is me, right? I'm the authority on my life and I'm sharing with you my personal experiences. And then to have somebody who's approaching it from a very sterile perspective and being like, nope, I don't agree with that. These people are groomers. And you're like, I am not. So it is, and we don't have an answer to that, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of where I don't that's kind of where I do agree. Where it's like where if you're just saying, hey, look, these people are just doing this. It's like, okay, well, like if you're in our group, that's not how you should start any conversation. And I honestly say that for anything. Like while we do allow people to attack generally groups, such as like you can come out and say, Democrats are X, Y, and Z, Republicans are X, Y, and Z, libertarians are X, Y, and Z. It's not police are X, Y, and Z. You can do that generally. It's honestly not very productive for discussion if we're going to be honest here.
Yeah.
Like it's way better to just kind of come in here and be like, look, I really don't understand why someone could think that it's a good idea to teach X, Y, and Z to children. Like that's a totally appropriate comment, and then people can come in there and actually ask, answer, hey, this is why we think it's appropriate. This is the age. What age do you think it's appropriate to teach X, Y, and Z? These are actually productive questions that actually get to the root of things and will probably make you understand that a lot of people agree with you. It's even with the whole abortion argument. That's something I've noticed too. Is because like I've told you before, I'm not quite sure exactly where I stand on that. And so I've kind of approached it differently because I'm not quite sure. And arguing with so many people from kind of basically the middle, I've kind of realized too that people's stances on it are a lot more similar, even if they consider themselves pro-life or pro-choice. And it's kind of interesting. Like you'll talk to a lot of pro-choice people, and then I'll be like, well, what about, at like 8 months? And they're like, hell no. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot more different than you would think. And then you'll have somebody who's pro-choice or pro-life, and they're like, oh yeah, the first, 9 weeks, I don't really think, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, but some people might consider that project. You've bifurcated an issue that's not really half and half,
So,
and,
I think it's
ahead.
interesting when you talk about that subject overall. It's interesting in that you can see some people try so hard to make it divisive, but if you can actually start on one common ground, which is nobody is pro-abortion, right? The common theme across all fields, we could start that nobody, that if abortions were never performed, actually everybody, both sides would be happy. And yet people don't even see that common ground, or they refuse that common ground. Or if I step in and I say, hey, nobody's actually pro-abortion, you see people actually trying to create that divide. No, they are. No, you are. You are pro-abortion. And it's like, actually, nobody is. Absolutely.
I
Like,
think there
no
are a
reasonable person
few
is.
people. I think there are a few people that are kind of taking the same kind of stance as um the kind of stances people who are really pro gun go. I can't wait for somebody to break in my house so I can shoot them.
Yeah.
And then there are some women who are like, I'm so proud of my abortion and stuff like that. It's like there are women that will come out and say stuff like that, but I think that's kind of what they're trying to do. They're just trying to ignite that visceral reaction from
Right.
the other side.
And I know a lot of women who openly discuss their abortion. They have no shame with it whatsoever. They're not guilty. They have no shame with it. They weren't even in a particularly pathetic situation, nor do they try to make it sound pathetic. I know a woman who had an abortion 3 months before she decided to carry a pregnancy because she needed to get surgery, and she couldn't get surgery while she was pregnant. So she terminated the pregnancy. She had her surgery. She got pregnant 3 months later. And she's got two beautiful kids. Even those situations, she would rather not have had an abortion. I don't know anybody who wanted to have one. And yet we can't even agree on that. We can't even find a starting point because some people will reject that right away and try to say, no, I know people that are. And it's like, no reasonable person is going around saying all pregnancies should be terminated, right? That's what a pro-abortion would be.
Yeah, and I also think that too, a lot of people who are pro-life also don't realize that abortions are quite expensive, and that if someone
Yes.
was to be using them, solely for
They're
a birth
expensive.
control method,
They're
yeah, that would you
unhealthy.
would. Well, I mean,
They're
if you're using it solely as a birth control method, you're looking at, if you're a promiscuous lady, you're looking at thousands upon thousands of dollars.
right. Right. And then not only that, but it's invasive. It is not how it's better to just not be pregnant than to terminate a pregnancy. Medically speaking, it's better to just not do that. Like nobody's actually doing that, right? We hear those urban legends that are, but again, we can't even get on the same page there because there's going to be people that are going to be listening to this going, but I know someone, I saw it on the news, I heard about it. And you're like, that's not actually happening.
Right. And I'm not saying like anything and everything has probably happened.
Right,
Like
right.
let's be honest, like it's a crazy world, so anything and everything has happened. People have vasectomies and they reverse themselves, and they've been told they couldn't have children for 20 years and they end up with one.
Right.
It's no stuff happens. Like, you can hear all kinds of crazy stories. So I'm sure some of these stories are accurate, but you also have to realize the difference between anecdotal evidence and data,
Mm-hmm.
which is, anecdotal evidence is very important, but you got to realize that that's what data is made of.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what we were talking about before, where we were going, well, people change their mind based on personal experiences, is right. Well, yeah, because when you look at personal experiences, you get kind of more of the whole of the story, and it's a little bit more effective. So whereas instead of taking one variable out of the story and saying, how often does this thing happen? And that's where you get data. So both are important, right?
Right.
So and that's kind of what the situation is. But you have to realize that once you look at data, you've sterilized it. And also the connection isn't really easy to find out always when you're looking at data, because we live in a world, with 1.5 million variables happening all around us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of predict what causes humans to do things is near impossible.
Right.
But we'll go back to the questions here. Richard would like to know, why isn't there a CPD podcast?
Listen, you know what? Maybe there can be. I don't know. I don't. I don't have the time. I don't know. Maybe if anybody wants to do it, let me know. Yeah.
I'll make this offer. If anyone from the group would like to come on and have a civil discussion, as we and Kylee are having right now, about any topic, you're more than welcome to come.
Yes.
So I will make that offer. And if in the future there's drummed up support for a podcast, I will also assist with getting that started.
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
That works for me.
Okay, so here's another one. This one was asked again by yours truly. It's a question that both of us know the answer to, but I think it'd be funny to ask. Who is TSR? Who is the sarcastic Republican?
Yeah, I used to have an answer to this, and now all I think of is like there was that horror movie with like some dude who was whistling, and it was like this energy force that just got sent from person to person to person. I am beginning to wonder if TSR is like just some sort of haunted energy source, and at one point all of us are. So that's my answer. It's just a hat that we wear.
Yeah, have you read 1984? Big Brother.
I'm gonna there we go. It's Big Brother. TSR is Big Brother. It's all of us and none of us.
He's all of us and none of us.
Yeah.
And then here's one submitted by you.
Oh.
Why does she hate me?
Okay. You guys do not know what my inbox looks like. And I pretty much get asked of some version of this question all the time. And the truth is I don't hate anybody, but for some reason that's what people go to. So I tend to be the one that gets involved in conflicts more than the other admins and moderators when it comes to trying to correct behavior or just trying to flush out if somebody should really be in the group or not. And so I end up with more conflicts than anybody else. And the truth is, whenever somebody comes in and they are trying to correct a behavior, the first thing people do is they think that I'm trying to dominate their opinion. And so that's why I actually piss off people all over whatever scale you're looking at, even the people that I agree with. There are people I agree with that I piss off all the time. Like I if I saw this comment on an NPR article, I would absolutely give you a thumbs up or whatever it is, but we're not there. So the truth is I hate everybody equally. And by that, I mean, I actually don't hate everybody. But I just get that asked a lot in various stages in my messages, just because I'm the one that often deals with a lot of the corrections or trying to do an evaluation to flesh out to see if somebody should stay in the group or not.
Sounds great. Here, let's turn that back on that question, but let's turn it on from as the person who asked it is asking it now. Why does Kylee hate Kylee? And and let's rephrase it though. But I mean, what do you think is your biggest struggle in actually being an admin? Like, what makes it hard for you?
I think what makes it most difficult is the amount of energy that I have sometimes just isn't there. And so a lot of times when I'm interacting with somebody, they might get low energy, Kylee, which is going to be very blunt and direct. or I might be very short with my decision. And I think that that's the part that I dislike the most. So as much as possible, when I am feeling low energy, when I am feeling like I can't invest in a healthy discussion, I actually try to stay out of modding the group. I try to give myself that little bit of vacation, that little bit of breather. But then as things come up and I get pulled back in, I either have to make my energy level work, or I have to somehow get inspired by it. So that's probably my biggest challenge, is making sure that I have a balance, that I'm not modding and adminning too much, that I'm still enjoying the experience, and that I feel like it's supposed to be a fulfilling and a rewarding experience for me. And as soon as that goes away, that's the part that I hate the most, is when it's no longer fulfilling, when I no longer feel like I'm, doing right by the members, not just the one I'm interacting with, but all of them. And that's probably what I don't like the most.
I get that. Yeah, and I also kind of try to stay away when I'm feeling a little extra catty from actually making decisions. I'm not going to name names, but you know that there's actually a member that I've gotten catty with so many times that I've just told you guys that I won't make any decisions regarding that member.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that nothing comes out of cattiness.
But that's important. So I think it's important for people to understand that we are not perfect, but also we're a team. It is perfectly fine for you to sit there and say, you know what, I cannot be fair in this particular situation, and there's enough other moderators to help support. That's why so many questions end up in that chat, like, hey guys, am I being unrealistic here? I need another perspective, right? And
Right.
so we do that a lot, and we coordinate a lot more on these things. Personally, I never give away names of who's done what action, which is another reason why people think I hate them, is they just assume that I did it, because I'll be the one that'll reach out. But I have to laugh because sometimes it'll be like our most conservative moderator that dinged a conservative member, and they're like, you just don't like my opinion. And I'm laughing to myself because I'm like, actually, you got dinged by a conservative. Like, it's not your opinion. But of course, I'm not the one that tells them that, right? So, or someone is like, you just don't like my liberal opinion. And I'm like, you got dinged by the most leftist person that we have in the group. Trust me, you're not liberal as compared to the person that dinged you. So,
if anything, he dinged you for not being liberal enough.
I know. Oh, you think you're liberal? No. So, anyway, going back to, I don't even know what question we're answering. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, it was why do you hate yourself?
The low energy.
Yeah. And I would argue that honestly, what I hate about doing it is actually, taking action. And that's kind of what we've gotten at it a little bit, but that's honestly, for me, it's like, I don't really like force. The only way that I can justify in my head to ever do any of these actions is if I believe that someone has broken the rules to a T. And the reason being is because they've agreed to the rules. And if you're not following the rules, then you're violating the contract that you made with us when you joined the group.
And for me, when I take action, so I hate it as well. I would rather honestly, I'd rather sometimes just be a member, because it's so much more fun to be a member. But for me, what motivates me isn't necessarily, the contract or the rules or that. Am I making space for a more healthy platform of discussion? And so that's one of the things I take a step back, and it's like, when I look at taking action, am I making space or am I silencing, right? Am I holding somebody accountable to a rule? because technically they broke the rule. But there was still healthy discourse. And so often I just have to ask myself, like when I jump in, like what is my end goal here? And as long as my
Right.
end goal is that I am clearing space for healthy discussion, then I go forward with the actions.
Yeah, I think also one of my methods that I try to get into when I can and I have the time is a lot of these things that are like they're not quite over the line, but they're concerning. These threads, I like
Mhm,
to get in them and say, hey, how's everybody do? It kind of take my little position and try to be the reasonable one, lead by example. People see
mhm,
the moderators in the chat, he's talking like this. Oh, look, he sounds reasonable. Let's see if
mhm,
we can do that. You know what I mean? Now my position sounds reasonable, and I've seen it actually cool things down.
mhm,
So I think also, the presence of just kind of being there and saying, hey, look, there is a better way of doing this, guys. We can understand each other and still disagree.
mhm.
We don't have to agree. You're talking to one person, you know,
Right.
like other people see it, but you're talking to one person. You don't have to agree. It's actually better if you don't, because then your idea is fleshed out across those comments, both of your ideas,
Mhm,
you know, and then someone can read it and they can see both sides of this issue. You know what I mean? I have replaced a lot of my news intake with CPD because of that.
mhm.
I can literally go through a post and read all the opinions on a given event that's going around. I see the citation links for all the different people that different people are listening to and getting their information from.
Mhm.
It has become a source to get to sources, if that makes sense. And then
It
and
does.
then you have this variety of outlooks on what's going on, and you have it worked out. You know, so like I said, try to get more caught up in debating the issue, not the person. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? That's another big one that I see so often is you see people jump in to a discussion and it's just straight off, let's make it about you. Well,
Yeah.
it sounds like you just don't understand this, and that's all the comment says. It's like, how does that add to anything? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You can make sure they understand it by saying, hey, did you know this, that, and the other? What about this? Have you considered this? You know what I'm saying? Instead of saying, you know, you obviously just don't get this. You could
Mhm.
literally say, have you considered this?
Yeah.
And it's a completely different tone. And now you have a conversation on your hands and not a fight.
Right. Another thing is, instead of saying, have you considered this? Ask, how does your opinion take into consideration X, Y, and Z? How do you address or how do you explain
Yep.
or what are your thoughts on whatever it is.
Right.
um
Explore the other person's brain, even if you think this person is crazy. Like if I
exactly.
had Hitler himself in front of me, I guarantee you, I'd probably need a translator, but I'd want to know what
Yeah.
the hell he was thinking,
Hmm.
because that guy was crazy. He
Yeah.
did a lot of horrifying things. I want
Hmm.
to know what was going on in that guy's head.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I just don't get the not wanting to understand these people, no matter who it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of what it is like, I remember when I first got into the group, I was a big, I want to win, I want to win, right?
Yep.
And then I finally just kind of I was like, I'm gonna open my mind up a little bit. Let me see what I can learn, because I kind of got inspired. And by the way that everybody was conversing, you know?
Hmm.
And I was like, okay. And then I got real inspired and I was like, let me go and look at this. It's like, what is the most crazy idea, I think? Okay, well, I'm a hard right libertarian. So what do you think the most crazy idea for a hard right libertarian would be?
Me?
Yeah, what would you think that would be?
The crazy ideas if you agreed with taxation?
No, what do you think? No, I'm
Oh,
saying what would be the craziest idea to a right-wing libertarian?
I would, that taxation is good.
Right. Well, communism probably, right?
Oh, okay. There's so many.
That's where
There's
I
so
was
many
going
things
with
to
it.
choose from. Okay.
That's where I was going with is communism as an ideology. So I started looking into communism. I read Karl Marx, and then a buddy of mine turned me on to Kropotkin. And so I read a little bit of Kropotkin, and then another buddy of mine turned me on to a guy named Bakunin.
Mhm.
And I completely changed my mind, right, about what I thought about communism. Now, I learned that communism is different from socialism in that communism is a stateless ideology. There is no state in communism because state creates a class, and you can't have a classless society with the state. So if you look at the the quote unquote communist dictatorships of the past, it's literally it's an impossibility to have a communist dictatorship. Because it's like, how do you have a communist dictatorship? How do you have a dictatorship without a state?
Mhm.
So there's all of those were examples of or examples of socialism, which made the whole thing finally ding, right? Where I've always been arguing with communists, that's not real communism. That's not real communism. Oh,
Mhm.
you see what I'm saying? And it's
Right.
like, talking to other people and discussing and opening up my mind started to make me understand, oh, so what you're telling me is my issue, my enemy is socialism, not communism.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
I can go and go forth and say, this is what I believe, you know, and, 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 and I have an interesting belief, right? So when I say stuff like that, people are like, wait, what? And then I start explaining it, and it's like, oh, okay. And it's like, I don't believe and that goes back to there's many ways to skin a cat.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It goes back to, like you said, there's many ways to be correct.
Right.
And that's kind of what it is. It's like, well, which one do you want? It's like, I mean, what the people want to do,
Mhm.
if there is no state, the people choose. You want to live as an anarcho-communist, go live in the commune.
Mhm.
If you want to live as an anarcho-capitalist, go live with them. It's that simple. You know what I mean? And my brain's like, okay, I like this. I can have a concurrent thought across my ideas. I can start to and like I said, everything started to build from that. And I really do believe that opening your mind can and like I said, it makes me understand my own beliefs better to be able to discuss them with other people.
Mhm.
So that's in my opinion the beauty of the group. Nothing is too extreme. We need to explore everything. And that's why we don't need banned books, because ideas, that are deemed dangerous, that's the ideas that we need to discuss,
Mhm.
because the dangerous ideas that aren't discussed fester in the shadows.
So, and again, what we're always going to struggle with is expression of ideas, but then also instilling a sense of respect for the
Correct.
people that are subjected to and controlled by and are forced to deal with whatever idea that is being discussed. And that's where where that balance comes in, where we become very pragmatic. So theoretically speaking, yes, absolutely, every idea should be discussed and fleshed out. Pragmatically speaking, if we did that, we would end up with a bunch of people that weren't personally affected by any of the subjects that are being discussed, because of the amount of energy and drain and unintentionally dehumanizing aspects of certain conversations. And so that's why we will never be perfect. We will always be in flux, and we will always balance theory with being pragmatic in order to ensure that we are trying to create the healthiest environment possible for us to interface with people that have differing opinions.
Awesome. So Kevin asked a question that I think he thought I would be too wimpy to ask.
Uh-oh.
Why are libertarians the worst?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, let's be clear. Humanity is the worst. I think we can all agree humans are the worst. I think that when I hear a lot of complaints about libertarians, I think the biggest complaint that I hear has to do with what I was talking about, where a lot of things that are very personal to people, a lot of challenges that people have had to overcome, a lot of humiliation that people have had to face, living their life with certain characteristics as an American. A lot of that humanity gets dismissed with a lot of libertarian principles. And I'm not saying by any means that libertarians are one particular way or another, or that they are purposely dehumanizing, but that they can be dismissive of a lot of the experiences that are close to people's hearts, and they take it as more of an intellectual challenge, or they take it to an intellectual novel idea, and that a lot of times the solutions are very impersonal as well. So I'm not saying libertarians are the worst, but I do know that is, if I was to summarize a lot of the honestly, the hurt that I hear that people walk away from interacting with libertarians, it would be just that something that is deeply personal to somebody else is treated as very novel by a lot of libertarian concepts.
Right. I kind of get what you're saying. And honestly, I've said that to a lot of libertarians as well. Is like, I get that your ideas, the thing is a lot of our ideas and a lot of the way that libertarians try to think, from my experience. Now, I'm speaking colloquial here, so I can't speak for everybody, obviously.
Right.
But the thing about it is like, a lot of this is trying to come from principle, and to say
Right.
that, so that way you can have a guideline that you can always go by, so you're not giving special treatment to anyone.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the idea is it's like, okay, well, if we just let guidelines set up whenever they wanted to, if we just voted on everything, like if you just took it to a pure democracy, we would have had it against the law to be Catholic, against the law to be Muslim, against, you know what I mean? Like originally country, like a lot of these people would have gathered together and said, my religion is the only religion, screw everybody else. And so there's kind of a reason why we go, okay, well, we're going to set this up through principle, so that way everyone gets fair treatment. There's no religion, there's nobody who's in charge, everybody can do what they want. So even if you do get power, it doesn't matter, you can't tell everybody what to do, when it comes to this. And that's kind of what I think they took a lot of that idea, and of course there were previous precursors to this idea, of course, but a lot of that idea and a lot of what Thomas Paine talked about when he was writing Common Sense, which was the revolutionary, document, basically. It's what spread around and caused the American Revolution. If you really look into it, you start to realize that it's like I said, it's an overarching thing to make sure everyone is treated fairly. You know, and that's kind of the thing. And I think a lot of these guys that talk about it, you know, they get too much on the consequential, you know, and they or not enough. You know, you have to address both with people. You know, it's not just about the principle, it's also about the consequential. And so, you know, you say, hey, this is the problem in this, and it's consequential to this, you know, and I think the consequences of what I would like to do would be this, you know, and I think the consequences are both less, and I think this way in principle is more fair. You know what I mean? And I don't think that it's addressed as much, because, like, of course the libertarian idea is that everyone would do better under libertarian ideas, just like the democratic idea is that everybody would do better under Democrat, you know, ideas, and Republicans believe that, you know, everything would be better under Republican ideas. Like, everyone cares if they're in politics. You know what I
So,
mean? If you're talking about politics, it's because you actually do care about what's going on and all the people that are affected.
so I'm gonna back up to something that you said. I don't necessarily agree that with that. Now I'm not as familiar with libertarian principles as I am with Democrat and Republican ones. I don't think that either Democrats or Republicans believe that everybody would do better under their principles. I think that, especially from the Republican side, that everybody who fits a particular mold, who works hard, who is, you know, worthy of success, will be successful. And that their principles have a way of trying to weed out those that aren't deserving of success. And I think that on the Democratic side, what they want to do is they want to sit there and say, okay, well, you need to reinvest back into the working class. If you make so much money, if you make X money, right? If you're makes a gajillion dollars, you know, 90% tax bracket is going to require you to invest back into the economy. I think that each side believes that America will be stronger that way, that the American economy will be stronger under their own economic plans. But I don't think that either group believes that everybody will be more successful. I think that they just have a way of trying to weed out those deserving of success versus those who are required to either not be successful or required to invest back into the system of which they benefited from.
I can get that. But like I said, for what I understand of libertarians, like, I've heard people say, well, libertarians don't care about the poor. It's like, no, honestly, I do believe that the policies that I put forth would make it a lot better for the poor. Because I do believe that taxes crush the poor. I do believe that drug laws crush the poor. I do believe that, you know, fines and taxation through a lot of citations tax the poor. You know, I believe that a lot of this stuff, you know, the way that our court system is set up is a tax on the poor. You know, like, if you start looking at the way the state really operates, you know, the IRS, most of their, you know, most of their work is going towards the poor, because they know that the rich fight them with lawyers. So they just go after poor people and small businesses. So it's, you know, a lot of this stuff, you know, I get what the intent might have been, but it always ends up being aimed at poor. You know, and this does come as a compassion for them. It's not just oh, I want to pay less taxes. You know, I literally mow lawns for a living. You know, I don't make $1 million a year. You know, it's not, when I'm saying, hey, I'm getting taxed to hell, I'm getting taxed to hell at like $30,000-$40,000 a year.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of what I'm saying is I'm looking at this and going, look at what we're seeing. You know, this is, they're selling you that we're going to do all this stuff and we're going to tax the rich, but it's never happened. It's not what it's not how it works. You know,
Right.
and And that's kind of my thing is I'm saying, hey, I would rather you, instead of really driving me broke, taking all this money, I would rather just say, hey, what do I want? I want roads. I want health care for some poor people. I want, you know, and then I will give my money to that. And then you can keep your bombs. You can keep your, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
You can keep all of
Right.
that stuff. I will do what I want to do. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And y'all can, I'm going to cut you out as the middleman.
Mhm.
And that's really what I'm arguing. I'm not arguing that nobody gets help, nobody gets a handout. Some people interpret libertarianism as that. It's not that. I'm
Mhm.
arguing that I'm arguing that I want to do it. I want to give the money directly, and I want to make sure their grubby fingers stay out the freaking money.
Mhm.
So I do want people to, I do want people to know that. I want people to, libertarians to know that you do have to remember that that part of the idea is something that is very rarely talked about, and it should be. You know, at the very base of our idea is that we're supposed to be moral. It's
Right.
non-aggression because of
Right.
morality. And you have to realize that, that care, that opposition to force has to come through. It can't sound like a stale, if then statement, you know?
Mhm. So I think that everybody has, we talked earlier, I said that, everybody wants to solve problems using the tools that they feel most confident in. And I think you've kind of hit on it right there, which is, that's how you feel most confident in the tool of taxation being used. Whereas with other ideologies, they would want to see the tool of taxation used differently. Either reinvest back into infrastructure, reinvest back into having a healthy modern workforce, including training such as college and or trade schools, or reinvesting or basically having the idea that if you make a lot of money, you get to keep a lot of money, right? That you don't have to, that it's to be used at your discretion, whether it's within our country or if it's in a foreign country, whether you're investing in a factory in Texas versus investing in a factory south of the border. So I think that when we talk about the core principles, they all sound correct. They all sound fantastic, and they all sound like they would work. And I think this is where we start edging into the pragmatic side, which is what does work, what is the society we want to see ourselves living in, and what do we need in order to have a healthy economy, a healthy workforce, as well as a strong country, of which we all want to, live in and thrive in and support. Um, so again, I think that with the tools in the libertarian toolbox, I think that they often get um, I think they can get misconstrued. You had talked about, first and foremost, you have to be moral. And I don't think that people necessarily trust the morals of libertarians. And I think that if that was established stronger, we may not have the discussion of why are libertarians the worst. And I think that having that laid out, if we could trust the morals of people that constantly say taxation is theft, I think that and especially when you come from a perspective that you want to see wealth reinvested back into the economy, I think when you see that, you're not opening yourself up, and you're not trusting the person that says that, or that says that too much, or dismisses your concerns with regards to that. So I think that ultimately we're going to come back to the issue of trust, of trying to make the other person not seem ridiculous, before we can move forward and really embrace the different um, ideas and plans and ideologies behind taxation and how taxation should be used.
Right. And I've heard a lot of people say that that's kind of ridiculous, but it is really kind of like a defund the police, all cops are bastards. And it's just a thing to kind of start the conversation first and
Right.
foremost. And then the other point is like, you know, it also kind of puts us back into the thing. It's like, even if the conversation ends, in my opinion, like if it, and this is something other libertarians I think should accept, but like if we have this argument and you go, okay, well, taxation is theft, and I go, well, and at the end of the day, you have to agree that the statement is correct, but the argument really there is it necessary? You see what I'm saying? Because it's like at
Really
the end
good
of the day,
point.
you're forcibly taking someone's money. So it is theft, period. End of story. But the question really that really what is wanting to be debated is it necessary?
That's a really good point. Yep, agreed.
You see what I'm saying? So the other side of that also needs to realize that, okay, so what is it necessary for? And then you start going, well, I want roads, I want this, I want that, I want this, right? And you start going, okay, now what do you want? I want roads, I want this, I want that. Okay, what do you want? I want roads, I want this, I want that. It's like, do you really think we'll have problems funding roads, that and that voluntarily? But the force is coming in to say, hey, if you give us this money to fund all this extra stuff, we'll give you these roads, this and that. It's like, let's cut out the middleman. That
Yeah.
is the argument of taxation is theft. But if you don't sit down and have the conversation, you just write them off as, oh, they're ridiculous. Just like defund the police. It's like, okay, look, dude, we have police that are straight militarized. We literally have police with tanks, drones.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, look at what's
Yeah.
going on right now.
Great.
Like,
No, it's
that is the
insane.
argument here. Let's talk about this. Where do we want police? What do we want police to be doing?
Hmm.
Why are they funded like a small country's military?
Oh my goodness. Yes.
These are questions that need to be answered. And sometimes you have to get past the fact that somebody started out with taxation is theft. You know what I mean? Because it is the
Mm.
truth. And that's kind of the moral argument. But like also there is, again, going back to, there's your moral argument there, but then you go back to the consequential argument, which is, well, what do we want to actually pay for? And if we're all agreeing on what we want to pay for, won't it get funded? If
I
we
mean,
all want
in
schools.
an ideal world, yes. But I think this is also where we have to venture into being pragmatic. And we have
Well,
to
it's also like
understand
the
that,
argument against is the free rider argument, right? You're saying that there's going to be people that don't want to pay into it and use the system anyway. And it's like with taxation, we have that too. There's rich people who evade their taxes. So it's
well,
like right now we have that, but pretty much only rich people can do it.
I'm going to take a step away from taxation. I'm going to talk about the erosion of benefits that have been offered to Americans. And so when we take a look at benefits that have been eroded, we see this a lot with especially baby boomers, and so much was invested into them. Um, in when everything from having a decent being able to expect a decent wage after the government fully funding your education, because you could go after your senior year in high school with a high school diploma, you can go and have a job of which you had a wage of which you could buy a house. You could do all of these things with a high school diploma that was fully funded by the government. And as we have grown and developed, we've moved away from a lot of benefits, and we've left the burden of reinvesting into the workforce on the individuals. We say that, if you want a successful career, you need to do X, Y, and Z, without understanding that people having successful careers contributes to a healthy workforce, of which will contribute back to a healthy country. And so when we talk about whether or not something is going to get funded, we can all agree that something should be funded. But then if we disagree on the amounts, and if we let those reinvestments erode away, which is what we already have, we're going to be in a situation with very random investments, which I get it, we already have. But I don't like to rely purely on the theory. Well, we all agree we want roads, so we're going to have roads. We're going to have different kinds of roads. Maybe I'm only going to invest in the road that takes me from my house to the grocery store, but I don't want to invest in the road that takes you from your house to your grocery store. And maybe that's a longer road. Maybe that's a problematic road. I don't want to invest in Puerto Rico's infrastructure. I don't want to invest in the bridge to nowhere in Alaska. I don't want to invest in any of these things because I don't see that being useful or helpful. And we start eroding at the reinvestments back into our economy and our workforce. And that is my biggest concern when we go to that very voluntary section of having our taxes go exactly where we want it to, and assuming that because it's important that we're going to invest in there appropriately. I've seen people make really dumb decisions with their own personal investments, and I don't necessarily think that we're all going to be on the same page.
A big argument that would be made from most libertarians, but I'll move on after this, on the road to the grocery store, would be that the grocery store has a financial need for people to get to the store, so they would probably be the one that would want to build that road. So yeah, you're right, that person might not want to put in the pot for that, their neighbor's road, but the grocery store damn sure does if they want to make money off of that person. And it's in the grocery store and the hardware store and the, you know what I mean? So they're all they're all going in the pot. Like, to be honest, and this model isn't crazy, because this model was how we built roads prior to income taxes. A lot of businesses built the roads because they had to have roads for people to get to their business.
I'm not saying crazy. I'm saying that there's going to be an erosion. You already see it when we talk about food deserts, right? So we have entire neighborhoods of which the only easy access to food that they have are liquor store snacks. And
bodegas and such. Yep.
Yeah. And so when again, theoretically speaking, the tools in the libertarian toolbox says, hey, I can solve this with exactly what you laid out.
But with what you're talking about, places that have the bodegas and such like that, the issue there is zoning a lot of times, because they're not really zoned for certain things. It's like, this is a residential area,
right.
So an exception would be this. So to be honest, it's not really a illustration of the failure of the ideas of libertarianism. It's more of a failure of the ideas of zoning, which is anti-libertarian. Libertarians say put things where you want to put them.
I think there's a larger discussion that would be off topic here. But what I'm trying to say ultimately is every ideology has solved the problem, and yet the problem still exists. And so at some point we have to take a step back away from our idealism, and we have to take a look at the pragmatic side. And that's for all ideologies. And so with the libertarian standpoint, there is the solution that you've presented. And yet where we stand right now, the direction that we're moving, I don't see how outside of the ideal I don't see how that's a practical solution, that we can expect anything better out of our country by going to that particular extreme. But that goes back into, ideologically speaking, sure, sounds great to me. Pragmatically speaking, it hasn't proven to move society in a direction that I personally want to see it moved towards.
Right. Well, like I said, I could argue for a week with you on this because because like I said, I could point to, okay, some of the biggest leaps in technology that have ever been made were made when we had very low taxes, very low regulations, very low, and like we went from basically starving to, and having slaves to freeing all the slaves and having all this, like it literally, this stuff went from, booming quickly just from that. We went from toiling, 18 hours in a field to, 12 hours in a factory to 8 hours a day to now people are working from home. I think that to if you look at the way that society does boom under that, and even if you look at America, like America, I do think is overregulated, but look at some other places in the world. It's the place, these places are places where the government has their thumb eternally pressed on everyone. And you look at those places and people are starving, people are, so to me it seems like the more free you allow people to be, the more ideas get explored, and we move towards the right direction. We
I am
started moving, like I
pretty
said, we started moving towards, you know we started moving towards desegregation through that idea, and then, they had to put in the government thumb to stop that with Jim Crow laws. Yeah,
I am pretty sure, Daniel, that saying lack of taxation is what ended slavery is why people think libertarians are the worst. Like that was a really weird connection.
no, I'm just saying that, if you start looking at, all of the history between that time, we had low taxes. Look, I'm saying that all of this paved the way for the industrial revolution, for machines to come along and basically outdate the fucked up shit that people were doing. You know what I mean? Because it goes back to what you're saying. The moral argument was actually winning, but the
Mhm.
pragmatic argument was coming in. It's like, well, how are we going to get all this stuff done? You
Well,
know what I mean? And in my opinion, I think you should have went with the moral argument off the gate and said, who cares? This is fucked up. You know what I mean? And that's kind of, I don't know. I mean, it, like I said, I could argue with you about this for a week and a half. But I think that when you allow for prosperity, you allow for people to start focusing on things other than just trying to eat. When people are just trying to eat, then they don't really care where their food comes from. You know,
and
and I think once people get a little bit more prosperous, they start being able to look more at the world around them and start saying, hey, it's the same reason why we look back at like child labor and we go, hey, that was messed up. We had children in factories. It's like before that, we had them breaking their backs in farms. You know what I mean? So it's like, no, yeah, it's bad. But it's like, we got to a prosperous society to where we could go, hey, children shouldn't work. You know what I mean? But if you would have said that, you scroll back in a time machine to the 1600s and say children shouldn't work, and the father's like, dude, we'd starve to death.
so there's a lot more here. I'm just gonna let it go.
But I'm just saying, it's a long argument, but we'll move on to, since you're in the CIA,
Oh, Jesus.
what do you know about werewolves?
Oh my. Listen, I do not recall.
You do not recall?
I do not recall. I'm going to plead the fifth on this one. Ah,
Oh.
someone got a hold of my book. All right, fine.
Oh,
Pass.
so pass. Here's the question. It was just asked as 9/11 question mark, but I'm gonna just kind of freestyle here. What let's do something interesting. What
Oh no.
conspiracy about 9/11 do you think is the most likely to be true?
Most likely to be true. Probably that it, not necessarily that it was allowed to happen to the extent that it did, but that I think the conspiracy theory that is most likely to be true is that the 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 administration in charge and the support of the administration in charge looked the other way and allowed something to happen. They did not, they weren't as aggressive as taking it down as they had said that they were. And that they expected it to be a threat and they expected something to happen, but not the extent that it happened. To me, that is probably the most likely conspiracy theory out there, is that at
I
some level it was
honestly
allowed to happen.
I honestly agree with that. I actually kind of agree with that. I don't 100% agree that they did it, but it's kind of like when you look at Northwoods, Operation Northwoods. I don't know if you've ever looked into that.
Have not.
Operation Northwoods was a CIA plan that they had
Mhm.
to fly some planes into some buildings and bomb some places and blame
Mhm.
it on Cuba to give us an excuse to go to war with Cuba.
Yeah.
And that was in the 70s. It got all the way through, our Joint Chiefs of Staff signed off on it, all the way up to Kennedy's death. And Kennedy said, "What the hell, are y'all crazy?"
Mhm.
And denied it, right? And then,
Mhm.
well, right after that, we know what happened to Kennedy.
Right.
So I'm just saying that if that same plan were to come across George W. Bush's desk, I don't really trust that George W. Bush went, nah.
Right. Well,
So
and
I'm just saying, whether or not we did it or we allowed it to happen, I do believe that. I'm not
react.
saying that we did. I think that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Mhm.
So I can't exactly say that we did, but I can say that the way that all the circumstantial evidence is lining up, it looks like one or the other is the case. We knew it was coming or we did it.
So it's interesting, the plane that hit the Pentagon. So first of all, that is deeply important to me. I didn't work in the Pentagon at the time, but I work in the Pentagon now. And so and actually my office is in an area that was destroyed by the plane. So it is personal to me when I walk around there and I just envision what it was like, the airport that they took off from, walking by that memorial. It is important to me, and I'm motivated to understand it. And I've looked at the conspiracy theories with regards to that. It was a missile, not a plane. And what I found fascinating was, so I used to also work on gas turbines. I used to develop FAA approved repairs for jet engines. And the the engines that were on the plane that hit the Pentagon, I actually am familiar with. And so when I saw the conspiracy theories regarding that, it was from the point of view of not somebody who had any experience with those engines, and I could see why people were falling for it, because they didn't understand how high compression, high bypass, gas turbines work. And so I felt really, I was embarrassed for anybody who would believe that particular line of logic. And I tried to go out there and engage with people and explain what they saw, the evidence that they saw with regards, especially to the turbines. That just happens to be something I was very, very familiar with. And it was amazing to me how many people just did not want to accept that. And on the reverse side, they probably thought I didn't want to accept it either. And
Right.
so I do believe that those planes, they took off, and that they had that. When you go to that memorial, if anybody's ever been, and you walk up and down there, they have the benches are situated according to the year of birth. There are children that were killed. There are very elderly people, and there's a whole slew in between you, and they point in the direction of whether they were in the building or whether they were in the plane. That's not something that a missile replicated. People didn't just chuck children into the fire, right? Those are
Right.
people that had lives, that had histories, that had loved ones. And so it's one thing to sit there and be suspicious and to question, but a question is never more valuable than data, evidence, and an answer. And some people value these questions so much, they're willing to dismiss the fact that people actually had lived experiences and died on that plane. And
You
that is
haven't answered the
probably,
question.
and well, that's probably the most disheartening thing when I hear these extreme conspiracy theories, how willing they are to just dismiss humanity because they have a question that they think needs to be answered, or is deserving of an answer. And I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying that the question, whatever it is that they came up with, is not more valuable than the data that's there. So I that's probably like the biggest thing with conspiracy theories that I personally take objection to, is when they completely dismiss reality, and they dismiss people's lived
Correct.
experiences, and they dismiss the loss of humanity, and they dismiss humanity altogether in order to come up with this very exciting something that somehow makes somebody that they want to be an enemy an even greater enemy. And that's usually what you hear behind it is, I already knew these people were trash. And then they come up with this conspiracy theory that just makes them even more trash. And you're like, but how much damage have you done to create this in order to hate on somebody you already hate?
Yeah, it's interesting, you know. It's like the flat Earth thing. I mean, I was arguing with somebody about that, and they were like, "Dude, I'm telling you, the Earth is flat." I'm like, "Dude, I've lived on the coast. I've
Mhm,
literally seen the curvature of the Earth
mhm.
personally with my own eyes. You know, I've seen boats just disappear,
Right,
literally going over the edge.
right. So
I've seen
the
it."
Yeah, and it's funny. It's so funny. It's like the flat Earth theory doesn't actually disturb me because they didn't remove anybody's humanity, except for when they try to say Australia didn't exist, and that's my home country. So,
Yeah, but quit
right,
lying. You know you're an actor, crisis actor.
right. I'm just a crisis actor. Um, so, and that's the thing is like some conspiracy theories, you just sit there and you go, okay, that's interesting, that's novel, that's fun, whatever, it doesn't matter.
You
And
can't tell me kangaroos are real.
right, yeah, I have to admit, that is one of the most creative invention of an animal that they ever
Kangaroos
came
are
up with.
real. Kangaroos are real, but unicorns aren't. Come on, what's more believable?
That's
A
actually
horse
very,
with a horn?
like I said, the question is not more valuable than the data. I've got pictures of the kangaroo. Um, the reason why I don't mind the flat earth one, like I sit there and I'm like, okay, fine, whatever, is because they're not dismissing humanity to come up with it. And all right, you have a proposal. I actually don't care what you think so long as you're not dismissing world, people's experiences, and you're not launching any satellites into space, right? As long as you can believe whatever you want, it's fine. But it's when you start eroding into people's rights, it's when you start actually taking action and having these real world consequences, that is where I take a step back, and I'm that's what gets me, that's what irritates me the most about conspiracy theories.
Yeah, that's my real issue. I don't think that, I think that ideas are always open for questioning, but I
Right.
don't think actions are something that, once you start forcing your way onto others, that is when any ideas of tolerance should be thrown out of the window for people who are using force.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where it is like, I don't think that, I think that as long as someone's willing to talk about it, you're kind of keeping them out of the violence. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of these people that are coming in and they're talking and they're angry, that's the step before violence. Shunning them out of the group, or not any group, shutting them out and making them, isolated is how you get school shooters and mass shooters. And I really think that a lot of these a lot of this is kind of, like I said, I think a lot of people just I want this person gone because I don't like them being around, because I
Mm-hmm.
disagree with them so wholeheartedly, you know, and other perspectives are important.
Yeah.
Some people are trolls, that exists
Oh,
too. And
so
and and I
true.
think that's also, kind of where we're going is like, how do we know whether this person's a troll? And that's not really what we want in the group either,
Right.
you know. So yeah, I get where you're coming from when you're saying, hey, I don't want somebody to come in here trolling other people, making them pissed off to where they don't want to talk about what, their opinions
Right.
and their real experiences, because they just don't want to deal with the clown.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like trying to discern whether it's just somebody who genuinely believes this way, in which case that's a good time to go, hey, you genuinely believe, okay, well, why do you believe that way?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, study them like a serial killer if you really think they're that bad. If it's the same thing. It's like, well, why would
Mm-hmm.
somebody think to go crazy and just start killing people?
Mm-hmm.
you know and we've studied mass shooters, we've studied, uh school shooters and all of that for the same thing. And again, like, in my opinion, if you look across the board, isolation is one of the most common things. These people end up isolated from everything, and then they freak out and
Mm-hmm.
do something, and then now they get all the attention. And that's why a lot of people have put forth that maybe their names should not be spoken in media for that reason, so they don't get that attention. You know,
I mean,
and
I can see that contributing to it. If we're going to get into a discussion on mass shootings, that's a whole other thing. But I'm actually under, I think that is a contributing factor. I think a lot of people, you know, do that. I think toxic masculinity is really big in that arena as well. People thinking they have the right, or that they are correct, they are in the right when they kill other people. I think that because regardless, there's very rare, almost negligible, probably negligible number of people that when they pull the trigger, they think they're in the wrong. They've always found a way to justify what they're doing. So I think isolationism is part of that, but only because it's allowed them to think that what they're doing is right. But you also have people that, when they reach out, they get radicalized, right? So maybe they would have been better isolated rather than being introduced to.
well,
um,
again, those people aren't reaching out to groups like CPD and, and such. They're reaching out to groups like what was it? You know, Unite the Right type people, and what was the other one? Stormfront and things like that. And that's kind of the thing is it's like if you're on Facebook and every group that you go on to talk about, you know, politics is kicking you out, but Stormfront's like, hey, we'll let you talk.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, then these people get radicalized,
Mhm.
you know, because you know, you kind of form function of the people around you, you know, and you kind of send them to a place where they, you know, everyone around them says the same thing they're saying. You know, that's kind of again why I'm so hesitant to just kick people out. It's because I don't want to just kick you back out to your echo chamber.
Mhm.
You know, any of those type of organizations that, you know, that are very aggressive and violent, you know, that's what it is. You go and you look and you talk to these guys, they're all very, you know, if you're not with us, you're against us, you know, and all that. And so it kind of, and you know, if you have two or three positions that align with them, you know what I mean, and they're the only ones that will allow you to talk and say your positions, then very soon you'll align with them with a lot more. So that way you can feel more, you know, accepted. And I think that's a lot of what happened to a lot of these right wing media pundits, where, you know, as they got kind of pushed out, they kind of embraced the people that would allow them to still speak,
Mhm.
you know. And I think that's the wrong thing to do. In my opinion, you should stay, you know, ideologically consistent, believe what you believe. But, you know, like I said, you have a lot of that happening where they're just embracing these ideas because it's the only way that they can stay on the air. And that's I don't know, man. To me, I think that, you know, pushing people into these, you know, extreme positions like that, it I think that, you know, the whole paradox of tolerance in honesty works the opposite direction. You know, as people are intolerant of the intolerant are galvanized, and they're able to say, hey, look, they're intolerant too. So they have no need to disguise themselves as being the tolerant ones because no one is. You
Well,
know, they muddy everyone. They make everyone the bad guy. So now there's no good guy, and it makes it very easy to be the bad guy if there is no good guy.
I mean, you're also kind of going into how people like to see themselves as the victim. Um,
Right.
and
Exactly. And that's kind of my
so,
thing is that if you're
but
intolerant of it, it kind of allows them to point and say, look, I'm the victim. Look, I'm the victim. Look, I'm the victim.
but they do that even if they're going to victimize themselves, they're going to do that in a mixed group as well as, you know, whether they stay in or they leave. But I mean, I think that overall, um, what needs to be unwound is that um, the constant need to vilify and to victimize. Um, there's a fascinating concept. I forget what it's called, but in every interaction we have, there's three roles that we play that exist in an interaction. There's the persecutor, there's the victim, and there's the rescuer. And regardless of what the conflict is, you're always going to fill in one of those roles, and you may go in and out between the roles. And the problem is that whenever we enter that conflict and we see ourselves as the victim or we see ourselves as the rescue, we see it all the time, right? We see somebody swoop in and try to save somebody else.
Right.
We see people claiming they're the victim left and right, and that this other person is persecuting them. Instead of, you know, being, you know, kind of taking a step back and being curious and understanding, we immediately fall into I'm the victim, or I'm the rescuer, or, you know, whatever it may be. And that is a problem that exists, and that we're so willing to turn other Americans into the enemy and into the persecutor. And we're so willing to make them seem extreme and idiotic and all of this is, I think, does get in our way. But that needs to be balanced out with the people that refuse to see reason and are going to go into that extreme area anyway, regardless. And I don't think that we should take the responsibility of preventing people from going into those extreme areas, and especially at the cost of, being treated as subhuman. I'm not saying that that is what you suggested. I am exploring a path right now, and I just want to make sure that that's very clear. I did not interpret that as being what you said.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of times that, people walk away from an interaction because they are dehumanized by somebody. And if that person then says, well, see, I cannot express my views here, and then they escort themselves into that echo chamber. And I don't think that it is the responsibility of the person to continue to be dehumanized in order to keep that person from going off and becoming that extreme radical. And that's
Oh
the
no.
crazy balance that we have to try to weigh out every time we get into these situations.
And this is one where I'll kind of disagree with you here. I would argue that it is their responsibility, but it isn't their fault. Okay. So, in my opinion, some things that aren't your fault still have to be your responsibility, because you have to take responsibility for things in the world to be able to change them. Equal rights was not Martin Luther King's fault, but he did take responsibility for it, and thus he was able to change it. Now, I'm not saying that I expect everybody to be Martin Luther King. Obviously, I don't. But I'm just kind of saying that which we don't take responsibility for, we cannot change. And so I do think that, we all have a responsibility as society, that when we see people having these ideas, to come forth and say, hey, this is why this idea doesn't make sense. And yes, that may be challenging. Yes, you might have to deal with some uncomfortable things that some people might say. And like I said, I've been there, and like I said, it hurts talking to people. It's like, I've had to talk with people about, my personal relationship, where people did not agree with the fact that I decided to marry a Black woman. But, at the end of the day, I had those tough conversations because I'm bringing a child into the world that has to live with people that think that way. And so while it's not my fault, it is my responsibility.
Mhm.
It is my responsibility to try to do what I can to make this world better for him.
So I think that the examples you brought up is a very reasonable one. It's also very short term at this particular point. Now, what I'm referring to would be more along the experience of your wife, in that her whole life she may have been treated one particular way or another, right? And that this is nothing recent, this is nothing new, and it's nothing that's necessarily even exceptionally motivated. So you brought forth a really great motivation, which is your son. And your son is, I believe, 18 months old, something like that.
No, my son is, as of right now, just a year old. We had
Right.
his birthday party this yesterday.
Right.
So
So it's been a year that you've been this motivated. And when I talk to other, especially women of color, who are in their 40s and their 50s and their 60s, they are damn tired of it, right? They've been doing this their whole life. They've never had an escape. And to ask them, especially, to continue to be dehumanized, to continue and to say that it's not their fault, but it's their responsibility to continue to reach out and engage with people that treat them horrifically, is different. It is different than asking you to do that. I think that it's a great motivator that you're talking about. But I would not I would honor the person that chose to stand up and to engage and
Right.
to continue to engage.
Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's any guilt on the part of someone who doesn't want to do that. That's not what
Mhm.
I mean. I'm just saying that if you don't take responsibility for something, you cannot change it. That's all I was saying. Now, don't get
I
me
can see
wrong.
that.
I'm not saying that if you don't do it, that you're guilty somehow, or
Mhm.
that you did something wrong. It's
Right.
like, not everybody is. It's the same thing. It's like some people are plumbers, some people are nurses, some people talk about politics. Not everybody does everything. And so, like, it's not. I'm not saying that just because you were born a certain color, it's your responsibility. Or even and honestly, like I said, I don't think that it's just that black woman, her responsibility. It's also the white woman, the white man, the white, everyone who believes the similar thing, that, hey, this is messed up, we should address it. You see what I'm saying? It's all of our responsibility. It's society. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I'm saying. It's a societal responsibility to address issues inside the society. Now, it
Mhm.
doesn't mean it's the fault of any individual person, but just like it's not the fault of any individual person that maybe there's this child that's hungry in the society, but it's still the responsibility of the society to figure out how to feed that kid.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? Now, no one's guilty if they're not able to do it. You know what I mean? No one's guilty of not doing, but at the end of the day, somebody has to.
Mhm.
And that's kind of my thing is and that's, again, like I said, that's why we look at Martin Luther King as a great, because he stepped forward and took responsibility in a time where it meant getting beat. You know what I mean? It meant a lot. It didn't mean just dealing with BS on the internet, which, like, I'm
Mhm.
not saying that that's nothing, but it's like, that's why we look at him as such the GOAT, is because he dealt with it when it was really hard, And the same thing with, like, Frederick Douglass. We look at him and we go, dude, you really dealt with it when it was really, really hard. You know what I mean? Half of the people that you were talking to didn't even believe you should be free.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, it's
Mhm.
crazy. Like that, and that's kind of what I'm saying is yes, that's why we look at them. And I think that a torch has been carried a long way, you know, and it has some way to go. And I think we all have to work together to carry it. It's not just a torch that needs to be carried by only one race or one ethnicity or one experience. It's a torch that needs to be carried the rest of the way into, by everybody who says, hey, this is wrong. We can't treat people wrong like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's just kind of the way I see it. You know, again, like I said, I take responsibility, and I did believe this before I had a child, before me and my wife got married. Because, like I said, I went to school in South Carolina. My school was 97% black. I was one of like 11 people in my graduating class that wasn't black. It was like 4 white people that graduated in my graduating class.
Mhm.
It was like 300 and some change people. So, like, my school was mostly black. Like, that was all of my friends. That's who I grew up with. You know what I mean? Like, I see these are my people. You know what I mean? I've always hung out with these people. I've always, you know what I mean? Like, I've always been around this. I don't know. To me, it's like, I don't know. I don't see it as different or other. Does that make sense?
I think we've wandered a lot. I'm not sure what your
Yeah,
last reference, how that has to go
but
back to it.
uh,
I would just,
but anyway, but
I would
I'm not
point
just
out.
saying that. I'm not trying to be the I have black friends, stereotype there. But I'm just kind of pointing out that, like, that's where I grew up. That, I saw this every day. I went, home with my friends. I dealt with, I saw cops deal with these people differently than me. And I'm like, why? This is fucked up. You
you
know what
have
I'm
a
saying? Like
different,
I've seen this firsthand.
I get it. You have a different set of experiences. I went through something very similar. The high school I went to, white was the minority. Um, we had a greater mix than 97%. Um, but I think that I'm going to go back to the point I was trying to make, which is I don't want to put the responsibility entirely on the person who has lived these experiences and
Yes.
is
Yeah.
drained by these experiences to continue to be dehumanized and insulted by somebody, and then somehow imply if they want to, I will honor them for engaging, but I don't want to imply in any way, shape, or form that somebody is responsible for keeping somebody from becoming an extremist when it involves them being subjected to dehumanizing
Right. And
comments.
that's not, and I just want to clarify, that's not exactly what I was trying to mean exactly there. I'm more meaning that like, I don't, maybe there's a better word than responsibility because I don't mean it as in like, as in the same as a liability, as in like you're guilty if you don't.
Yeah,
You know
they
what I
have
mean?
they have an opportunity, and I try to when I'm presented with the opportunity of somebody sharing their personal experience with me, I try to honor it. I try to listen. I try to understand. Um, and to me, that's precious. But I told you that's one of the reasons why I even wanted to join CPD was I wanted to, my two favorite argument, my two favorite situations to get involved in is the one where I am part of the discussion and where I am, getting to experience somebody else's lived experiences. So I try to make room for. I try to be a responsible listener. I try to be an advocate for people that are disadvantaged. And I also try to advocate for my model of what a healthy workforce looks like. And when we have this slipping of extremists into these extremist groups and isolation and all of that, I try to dedicate my energy. And yet, if I can't, or if I'm not doing it well, then I take a step back. I have to protect myself. And there's only so much that we can do to throw ourselves out there. And there's only so much of myself that I can leave vulnerable and stay engaged with somebody before I have to take a step back and I have to protect myself. And if that person wants to continue to slide down that slope, then I have to wave them adieu. And
Right. And I agree that, like I said, not everybody can be saved either. And that's kind of not exactly what I mean too. That's it. It's kind of like if somebody texts you and says, "Hey, I'm feeling sad and I might kill myself." You know what I mean?
Mhm.
If you can't talk them out of it, it's not your responsibility that they killed themselves, right? But like I
Mhm.
do think that you still have a responsibility to kind of be like, "Hey man, I don't think this is a good idea," and try to and
Mhm.
contact somebody. And you know what I mean? Even
Mhm.
though I don't think you're technically guilty if you don't.
Yeah.
And that's basically kind of where I'm at, is like I'm saying that, hey, if you can, you should make the attempt. But if they're going to come back and just be a straight jerk to you, yeah, I get why you say, hey, look, I don't have time for this. You're not even here to discuss, you're here to troll. That's not the same. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Somebody hurt will want to talk about it. You know what I mean? Even if they're still demanding their right, they'll still want to talk about it.
Mhm.
you know Somebody who's not is just going to just sit here and keep calling you names and drawing you in. And so, yeah, I don't honestly think this isn't an invitation from me saying feed the trolls. It's more me saying that, like, again, the group is about understanding, man. Reach out and try to understand these people. If they're not trying to be understood, then move on. Don't waste your time.
Mhm. Very true.
So, like I said, it isn't me, again, it's not me saying that any of these ideas are legitimate. You don't legitimize ideas by them just being spoken aloud or them being written down. You know, the legitimacy of ideas are from them being teased out and other people saying, hey, this is a good idea. You know, and to me, you know, a lot of these ideas that we're very fearful of are very, very old ideas. And the reason why they're not very common today, and they do exist, but they're not common today, is because they've been teased out for centuries. And the ideas that we have commonly are the ones that have won. You know, and I think that as long as we still have faith that that will still work, that the ideas will win eventually, because they have thus far, you know, and that's kind of, I don't know, that's just kind of the way I see it. You know, if somebody's trolling, they're just, you know, making jokes, then keep going, but you can change some people's mind. Now we have a question from one of your most favorite, most cherished members.
Oh no.
Tammy would like to know,
Oh God. What did she
why
do to
haven't you written a literary agent?
me? Listen, I listen, Tammy. I will. I I I will. No, she's got a point. So I have written a couple books. Um, but
If you want,
when
you
you
can definitely plug them.
no reason. One of them is not even one of them is available publicly to read for free. Um, another one was my first pet project, and then I've got scraps of other books written as well. Um, Tammy's been a great support, and the thing is that when you do something on the side, when you have a side project, especially when you're doing something artistic like writing, there is creating the work, and then there's everything else that goes into it. And it's everything from establishing a social media presence to writing literary agents to finding editors to designing a cover, and there's so much other stuff that goes with it, that a lot of times if you're trying to do something for fun and you're trying to share a neat story or something like that, that you can get bogged down with everything else that goes into supporting it. And so Tammy's been absolutely fantastic on keeping me on course, and I have no excuses other than I just keep on writing and editing and editing and editing, and she's been very supportive so far. So I will get to that, but I also have another book that I'm going to write first.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I think you should do it. I've read a little bit of what you wrote. I mean, in
Oh, you
between the
did?
little bit of, yeah, a little bit of time that I do have.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've told you from what I've read of it, that, you know, in my opinion, when you're reading any kind of nonfiction or any
Mhm.
kind of fiction, I mean,
Fiction. Yeah,
uh, any kind of
definitely
fiction,
fiction.
the best thing, you sure? Because I mean,
If werewolves are real, I'm not. I'm still going to go with no comment on that one.
but anyway, but like that's one thing I told you is I can tell, like in my opinion, one of the greatest things that you can do is you build the world and then build from there. You build the
Yeah.
world, you build the characters, you build, and then you start writing the story. And I can tell by reading what you wrote so far that I've read that
Mhm.
that's kind of the method that you've went. And
Yeah.
because of that, like you've created a story that very easily could have a whole lore behind it, like Lord of the
Mhm.
Rings or Star Wars or any of that, where it's not just the story, but there's all this other stuff that you could have
Mm,
going on in the background in your head going. I think it's a good story that you got.
thank you.
And like I said, I think that you definitely should pursue, ways to get paid on that. You know what I
Like a
mean?
little side hustle.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're not getting that much, I mean, I think a lot of times I'm sure a lot of this stuff in the book hustle makes it where a lot of these books are pretty unaffordable for a lot of these people. People love to read books.
Yeah.
I'm sure that you could figure out a way to where this book really only costs people, 5, 10, $15.
Yeah.
And not only would you get read well because of that, because there would be a high access to your book, I think also like it would be a very neat thing to do. Because I know I grew up quite poor
Hmm.
and I was always in the library reading.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that was one thing, man, when the newer books came out, a lot of times they wouldn't be in the library yet. So, get convincing my parents to drop 60, 70 bucks on the brand new book that came out wasn't always the easiest thing to do.
Hmm. I can see that. Um, so I grew up poor as well, and very classic, yeah, situation where you're on and off different types of government assistance. Always worried. Child Protective Services might be called. Um, and it's interesting, like what some of the signs of success are and how rewarding certain things can be. One of the things that I find very rewarding is being able to buy books. And just being able to go to my e-reader and just buy it and download it. And then another sign of success. This is actually, I know it sounds funny, but it's actually deeply personal to me. When I was going through college, so I paid for my own way to go through college, and I had a cat, and I would always try to buy him like the best of cat food, and sometimes I couldn't afford more food for him, so I would like stretch it out or try to mix it with like whatever I had in the fridge that cats could eat. And I always felt like he looked at me like he knew what was happening, and he wanted, his kids or whatever it was. I always felt so guilty when I did that. And so one of the other signs of success I have as an adult is having enough free time to be able to write, but also buying cat food whenever I need it and buying books whenever I want them. And so I do feel very fortunate that I'm in a situation that I can write a story and that I can share one of my stories for free with anybody who wants to read it. And they may find something in it that they grab onto that inspires them, or that makes them challenge something in their life. And that's all I can really hope for with that one. So I do feel like I get to give back in some ways, and that sometimes it's these small signs of success, like you said, like comparing to when we were children versus where we could potentially be now.
Right. And yeah, it is crazy, man. I got my first car at 26.
Yeah.
So and yeah, and like like I said, I used to walk, 5, 6 miles to work every day, 2 hours, and that's another thing that I like I said, I really like to take the empathy position too. It's like, if I'm in that situation, 2 hours to and from work, sometimes at like 11 o'clock at night, I'm walking home because I waited tables,
Hmm.
you know, and I'm walking home at 11 o'clock at night with, a couple $100 of cash in my pocket,
Yeah.
and I was just like, man, what if I was a lady trying to do this?
Hmm.
One of these times I might not make it home.
Yeah.
It's literally, there is definitely a lot of situations that like you look at, like there are ways out of it, but sometimes the ways out of it aren't as easy as people want to point out to it. So I'm one of those that kind of say I do agree that if you really want a way out, there's always a way. You know what I mean? You just got to find it and go. I do agree with that, but at the
Mhm.
same time, we can't ignore the fact that, hey, this was really freaking hard. This person's got a lot of, stuff in their way. Because like I said, most people get their first car at 16. And, I had a full-time job the whole time.
Mhm.
But it's, I saved up, stuff happened, saved up,
Mhm.
stuff happened, you know? And so eventually I made it happen. So it is possible, but to sit here and pretend like it's just, oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, I think is a really kind of a ridiculous thing. I
Mhm.
think that's why I'm all about removing barriers. I think that instead of trying to give people ways to get over the barriers, we need to try to get rid of the barriers.
Mhm.
If that makes any sense.
It it does. I think we could open that up to a whole other discussion as well. But it does, because I have a feeling every single person I think would agree with that statement. Um, I think that the barriers that people are willing to move out of the way for certain people uh, changes with your ideology, and I think that that's
I
where the
agree with
real
that.
discussion comes in. Everybody thinks that, and let's face it, everybody thinks that their ideology is going to lead to an economy and to an America that they think is best. And if we start with that, that agreement, and we'll actually find that we Americans actually agree on a lot of things. It just, we pick on the things that we don't agree on, and then we just assume that this person's out to destroy America. Um, so those barriers that you're discussing, I absolutely agree with it. I don't know what barriers you're talking about, and I have a feeling that we're going to agree on different barriers that need to be moved versus protections that need to be put in place. But
Right.
that's the difference with every ideology. What's a barrier and what's a protection? And it changes with wherever you are on whatever spectrum you're evaluating.
That's definitely true. I like that. I agree. So on to the question that really matters.
Uh-oh.
Forks or spoons?
So honestly, a fork, and then just lift the bowl to your face. Like, a spoon is redundant by a bowl. Spoons shouldn't exist. Like, if I
Kind
was
of
going to get
agree with
rid of a
that.
utensil, I'd get rid of a spoon.
And the straw.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same
Okay.
reason.
The
Just
only
turn the
the,
glass up. Quit choking turtles.
the only reason I still support straws is because I have sensitive teeth, and sometimes it's too cold, so I just have to get everything without ice.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
I
I
mean
need a
that's what I
straw to get it
same
past my teeth.
same. I can't. The only thing I'll ever use a straw with is sweet tea for the same reason.
Yeah.
Because I
Yes.
can't have the ice on my teeth. I don't like
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
But that's why just everywhere I go, I get everything with no ice.
I did have a fun experience. So I lived in Korea before I moved out here to DC. And while I was there, we had a going away party for one of the Americans. They were moving back to the States. And so we got together at lunch at an American style restaurant. And it was so fascinating to me. There was a group of Korean nationals that were on my team, and they were very, very awkward with their knife and fork and spoon. And I had never seen such a thing. And, kind of like I've seen so many people struggle with chopsticks. I have never
Right.
seen a person struggle with a fork. And it wasn't until then that I realized, oh, I just thought that that was just natural, that if forks just seemed to make sense. And I just watched them struggle. And I just thought to myself, go figure, you know, and that was actually probably the first time I gave a knife, fork, and spoon an actual consideration as to the value that they bring to the eating process.
Well, to be honest, I heard the story behind chopsticks, and I honestly was sold.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing about it is within Confucianism, I think it is. He was pointing out that he said that forks and knives were weapons of war and had no place at a
Interesting.
dinner table.
Interesting. The
Yep.
downside to chopsticks is that everything
They
has
just
to be
cut it all up
bite
in the kitchen.
sized. Well, everything
Yep,
has to
they
be
cut
bite
everything up in
sized.
the kitchen and then they serve it
Yeah.
without knives. That's the
Yeah.
idea.
But then they serve it with scissors, and you're like, okay. So I have never used scissors on meat before I moved to Korea, and it's really weird. But yeah, scissors. So they serve you with chopsticks and scissors.
That's interesting. I haven't seen that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love chopsticks though. I've got quite good at them. I used to wait tables at a Thai restaurant.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah, I love using chopsticks. I looked into it because I was kind of curious. But yeah, the forks and knives used to be used in that part of the world, but it was a function of Confucianism that did it. And then Confucianism became tradition, kind of like atheists celebrate Christmas.
Yeah.
You know,
Because
it,
atheists
it
like
it came
gifts
from
too.
yeah, it comes from religion, but at that point they're just celebrating it in a traditional way rather than a
Well,
religious way.
there's something to celebrate about Christmas, even outside of Christianity. That's actually, if you
The
look
end
at
of
a lot of,
communism. No, I'm just kidding.
I know, right? Um, Actually, if you look at a lot of atheist support groups, a lot of people that are leaving their religion, they turn to atheist support groups because they also lost their community when they lost their religion. They still decided it was the right thing for them because they didn't believe in their religion and or they didn't like their religion or they didn't appreciate it. But a lot of atheist support groups are actually trying to create a community for these people that had to leave everything behind when they left the religion. And so that's why when you look at why do atheists celebrate X, Y, and Z, a lot of times it's for community, it's for family, and it's to participate in something fun, even if they don't believe in the religious aspect of the holiday, they're still participating for other reasons.
Right. And like I said, I mean, traditional and cultural reasons. I mean, you
Yep.
you live in the area, you practice what's around.
Yeah.
When in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Yeah. Enjoy it. Have
you
fun. Yeah.
know. And we have one last question from Jim. I
Okay.
think this is probably one of the most interesting questions, which is what topics have you changed your mind on as a
Mm.
result of this group?
I think the biggest, I don't know if I've changed my mind on it, but so I have changed my mind on a lot of things before the group because I've only been in the group for a couple years now. Um, I was exposed to actually one of the other admins explained something to me that I thought was clearly very blatantly racist. And she stepped in and she actually explained it from the terms of a libertarian standpoint. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I do understand it. And it has to do with understanding the difference between classism and racism and how a lot of laws, rules, and regulations that I had classified as racist because they disproportionately affect minorities, she had pointed out, disproportionately affect those in poverty, and that the solution to these problems, even if the problem is racist, the solution may be to correct the classism and not necessarily to correct the racism. So I think that if there's anything that I have learned the most from the group, it's that the problem and the solution may actually be in two different categories. And that's also where I get very pragmatic. I want to correct racism. However, if
Right.
I correct classism, it may take racism with it. And that
Well,
is
yeah,
probably the
well,
biggest thing.
that's kind of what I've argued before as well. It's kind of like if you have the intergenerational poverty, right, where you have somebody starting at square one and then they're trying to get to square 50, while everybody else is already at square 25 and they're trying to get to square 50. It's going to be a lot easier for them to do it, right? And it's not like once the slaves were freed, everything was just hunky dory. I mean, there was discrimination, there was all of this too. So, like, if you look at it and really understand it, then you can see that, like, it's kind of there. It's like, it takes a generation to build something, and another generation builds it a little bit more, and then you know what I mean. And I'm sure a couple get swatted down here and there. And if you're starting from square, one, it's a lot different from starting from square 25, right? So, and then if you also have policies that make it really harder for anyone who's 15, square 15 or behind, you know what I mean? Then yes, it might be intended. The policies, when they were enacted, might have been intended to go after, you know, Black Americans. That's very true. But because of things like the 14th Amendment, right? When they wrote policies to go after Black Americans, a lot of the ways that they had to do it was just going after poor Americans, right? Because if they just said all the Black poor people can't do this, it'd obviously get challenged. And so yeah, I think that yes, sometimes the motivations were um, racism. I think sometimes they were classism, but I think effectively because of some of the other rules that were in place, they kind of became one and the same.
Mhm.
If you look at, like, again, the same thing with like disproportionate prison sentencing and stuff like that, it looks a lot more as a function. It looks more a function of whether or not you had a public defender than whether or not you were Black. You know what I mean? If you actually start looking into a lot of that, the
Mhm.
disproportionality, it really does. I think it has a lot more to do with these guys are just getting really crappy lawyers. And then when you start to look at it too, it's like, why are prosecutions spending, 100 times what they're spending on the prosecution, what they're spending on the public defender for the guy to defend himself? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, like, yeah, to me, yes, if you look at it, classism, in my opinion, is a better way of addressing it because of that reason. Because, like, the racism side, I'm not trying to say that it's fixed. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying it's kind of addressed by the 14th Amendment, and the hole that they're moving through is the classism hole.
Mhm.
Does that make any sense?
It it does. I agree with part of that. But I think to center on the question asked, that's probably the biggest area that I've had a change on since joining the group. Has been understanding that even though something is racist, it can be corrected without directly correcting the racism behind it. That it can be corrected by using classism or accounting for that. And then it'll basically disarm the racist aspect of whatever that initiative is. So it can
Exactly.
be voter suppression. It can be, you know, that you mentioned the courts. That's another area to take a look at. But there are also things that are very clearly racist that have to be corrected by, dismantling that um, that that belief as well. But it also doesn't remove the responsibility of the individual to understand what they are doing that is affected by race, that what they're doing that is racist. Even if it's not, by agreeing to correct something that is disproportionately affecting a race, that, by correcting with classism does not excuse the people that supported it from, being racist, or does not excuse individuals for their own contribution to systematic racism that we have in America.
Yeah, for sure. And then, and like I said, that's exactly what I'm getting at. We all have different experiences, and we all have you know, different things that we're trying to fight for. But like,
Mhm.
sometimes again, going back to that, there are many ways to solve a problem. And what we're trying to find out is what is the most agreeable solution to the problem for the most people.
Mhm.
And which one, because everything that you do is going to have consequences.
Mhm.
And what consequences are we okay with? And to me, I'm kind of with you on the on like what you're saying is that sometimes you have to address things in a manner that might not jive generally with the way that you want to.
Mhm.
But
Right.
it's important to get these things done.
Right.
And the social work of solving racism and solving classism and solving discrimination is going to be an uphill battle, and this is nothing new in history. And that's kind of my thing is I don't know, it's something that I've kind of looked around. It's almost like people are like, this is new. All this stuff that's going on, it's like it's not new. It's been around. It just needs to be addressed. It
Mhm.
needs to be handled, and it needs to be solved. And we have to have the conversation. It's got to involve everybody. You know what I mean? Or else we're not going to fix the problem.
Mhm.
Because it's a problem that involves everybody. And I don't know, man. Like, you have a long history of a bunch of rich, mostly white people running this, and you have a history of a bunch of lawyers running this, and I think that a lot of this is set up to where these guys are able to make a lot of money, and it's really hard for other people to challenge and get their money,
Mhm.
stack the deck in your favor. And yeah, I really do think that, if you look at a lot of these laws across the board, it doesn't seem like they're really, yeah, it's something I've said numerous times in the group. Laws are for poor people. And it really is the truth,
Mm.
and it's not what I think it should be, but it is what it is. The more money you have, the more, power you have, the more it doesn't matter whether you break the law, you know, and it's sad. That's not the country that we were supposed to live in. That's not the country we designed, you
Mhm.
know. Thomas Paine's Common Sense, one last citation to that. In Common Sense, he said that every year we should have a ceremony where we take the Constitution and the rest of the law and put it on a pedestal, put a crown on it, break the crown, and pass it out to the people. That was one thing he wanted to do every time, because he said the king of this country is the law. No man is king of this country. No one is above the law. No one is above it. Anyone breaks the law, they should be subject to it. That was the way that it was supposed to be. You know, that is what the founders were really talking about. Now, not all, obviously, not all of them were ideologically consistent. That's why I always go back to Thomas Paine, because, you know, he actually was the one that was challenging him. Like, funny story about him, just as a quick aside before we get off here and call it a day, is Thomas Paine actually wrote Common Sense that stirred up a revolution in the American colonies. And after he did that, he left and went to France and helped kick off their revolution, right? After that, he left and went to Britain, and Britain was like, I know what you're doing here. And they tried to kill him. So he fled and went back to France. And at this point, that revolution had failed. So guess what he did? He helped start the second French Revolution, right? And then after that, they tried to kill him in France. So he left and went back to America and proceeded to talk heavy crap about the founders and their straight hypocrisy with slaves. He talked smack about George Washington, because George Washington put down the Risky Rebellion. Because he was like, you put down the Risky Rebellion because they were rebelling for paying a tax on a war they didn't want to fight. He's like, does that sound familiar?
Right.
You know, and he was talking hella smack about that. He came back and was saying that organized religion was stupid, Catholicism was stupid, Protestantism was stupid. So like when he died, he had like 7 people at his funeral. This man was fighting for women's rights. He was saying that not only should they free the slaves, they should give them equal rights. The only one that actually held to his beliefs was Thomas Paine. You know, and like the more I read about him, I'm like, dude, I'm impressed, because like it's one thing to be that guy now. You know, it's one thing to be that guy now. This was the 1700s where they'll cut your head off for being that guy. You know? And again, that's why a lot of these figures, we look at them again as heroes, because it goes back to, you know, it wasn't their fault that the world was the way it was, but they did take the responsibility to change it. And because of that, we lived in a better world. We all live in a better world because he said, hey, I'm going to start writing these pamphlets. I'm going to start talking to these people. I'm going to start explaining why freedom is the ideal. You know? So, but if I'm going to talk about my changed mind, I think I did a little bit when I talked about communism. I was heavily pro-life when I first started into the group, and now I wouldn't say that I'm not pro-life. I wouldn't say that I'm not pro-choice, because it's like, to an extent, I kind of agree with both. And that's,
it's also important to understand the difference between being pro-life for yourself and being pro-choice with regards to laws and the government, and allowing and taking a step back and saying, I am pro-life with the decisions that I make with regards to my relationship and to myself. But I don't believe that should be part of what the government does. And I don't think that is hypocritical at all. And I don't know if that's what you're falling into. And because I think that position
not necessarily.
gets
I'm
overlooked a
falling
lot.
into an issue my issue is that both, again, like for me, a lot of my ideas, I want to come out of morality and principle first, right? And go back to, just to call back to the question, what's wrong? What was it? Why are libertarians the worst? I will say one of the things that sucks the biggest about the ideology of libertarianism is that there really isn't any solid way to handle children. Um, the rest of the whole ideology comes from the principle of self-ownership, the fact that you own your body, and then everything comes from there, right? So if that's the case, right, you start from there and then you get out to that. It's like, who owns a child's body? And that becomes a very complicated question, because of course you don't want to give ultimate ownership of a child's body to really anyone, because we don't we can all admit we don't really trust anyone to have it. We don't trust the child to have it. Child shouldn't be able to make ultimate decisions about its body. That's weird. That's crazy. Parents shouldn't have just ultimate be all end all authority to do whatever they want with their child's body. That's obvious. And the state shouldn't have ultimate end all be all authority. So where do you actually figure out that the problem? And that's kind of, in my opinion, one of the biggest issues, right? So it, as long, and like I said, there's several problems, in my opinion, with the whole circulation of the moral issue of the situation, which is, number one, it's like, how much can you require of someone else's autonomy for someone else's survival, for another survival, right? It
Right.
comes to, like, if you have a child, right, that even if you have a child that needs a kidney, can we force the father of the child to give up a kidney because
Hmm.
the child would die without the kidney? Now, of course, most fathers would do it, but the
Right.
question is could you force that?
Right.
And most would answer, of course not. And then that, that's kind of, that's one issue there. So it's like, how much of the autonomy can you give, right? Or even give blood to the child? you know can you force the father of the child to give blood to the child?
Hmm.
Like, of course not. And then and that's one thing there. But it's also like, it's also a lot of issues too, where you go, okay, well, but where does where does the problem come in when you have a situation where, to an extent, the child was also invited into the situation? And like I said, not in all cases, obviously,
Hmm.
but in most cases, the child was basically invited into the situation, and it wasn't through the fault of the child. So, in most situations where, if you invite a person into a situation and they're now in danger, you have the obligation to get them to safety. So that's kind of what I'm saying is to me, is it's a bunch of little conflicting issues here. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Where, like I said, and honestly, funnily enough, it was the COVID stuff that really made me really start to think about it. Because it's
Hmm.
like, well, can you force someone to get a vaccine
Hmm.
so that other people are protected? You know what I mean? Can you force someone to wear a mask so that other people are protected? How about force someone into quarantine? You know what I mean? So, how much of someone's body autonomy can you restrict for someone else's survival? And
Hmm.
then it's like, okay, well, if we say it has to be the survival of a bunch of people, it's like, well, how many? Where's the line? You know what I mean? Where does it become a problem? And that's kind of the thing, is, to me, it's such a complicated question. Also, given the fact that a child, a lot of the arguments that you could make for, for those would also apply to when the child is not in the belly. You know what I mean? because you're still giving of your body, of your labor, of your, to support that child.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I don't know. I mean, at what point do you have a moral obligation where you go, okay, well, at this point now, I have to take care of this thing because I made these decisions.
Right.
You know what I mean? And again, like I said, I'm not saying that it's, I just think that it's not as easily cut and dry
Well, and I
as
think
so many
we
people want to put it. I
I
don't
think we
really
should
think that I have
also,
a personal, it's not that I have a personal belief and then no, I mean, at the end of the day, if we're talking about somebody dying, you know what I mean? If abortion is the murder of a child, you know what I mean? Then that's very significant. You know what I mean? And honestly, like if we're talking about murder of a child, that's something that literally should basically never happen. And that's kind of what I'm saying is like I don't you know what I mean? Like it's not as simple as just saying, okay, well, this is the decision. Because we're literally talking about, murdering a child versus and that's kind of the thing that I've said to so many people. It's like, stop and think about what this argument is. Don't get mad at other people for being passionate about their side. We're talking about the difference between, you know, women's right, one side who thinks that their rights are in a huge risk, and another side that thinks that children are being murdered at a rate of 100,000 over 100,000 a year.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like either side, if that's what you believe, has a right and an obligation, in my opinion, to be pretty ticked the fuck off. You know what I mean?
So
So
it's
like,
also completely possible for you to be pro-choice and absolutely abhor the idea of abortion. Being pro-choice does not mean that you are in support of abortion or even that you are okay with it. Being pro-choice can also encompass the idea that it is so messy that the government and that other people should not get involved in that decision.
now I
That
definitely say that that's
decision,
my current sticky spot. Is I'm just kind of like, whatever we're doing at this moment, we should keep the government out of it because it's not been decided.
well, not just the government, because a lot of times people think of the government as politicians, and I do believe that politicians should be out of it, but also other voters, other people.
That's what I mean when I say the government. I mean the state. Like, we keep the government out of religion, meaning we don't vote on whether or not you can have this, that, or this religion.
Right. Right.
That's kind of what I
So
mean by keep the government out of it.
it is
This
completely
isn't up for a vote.
it is completely possible for you to absolutely hate the idea of abortion. It is completely possible for you to believe that abortion is killing a child and still be pro-choice simply because you want the government to stay out of it and because you don't want to get involved in every little situation and in every possibility and start dictating to a significant portion of Americans what medical treatments are available to them and what their bodies must endure, and just take a step back and completely hate abortion and still be pro-choice.
Right. And like I said, I can't argue with either or's logic, because, like I said, but at the same time, I also understand the logic of the other side saying, hey, well, if you're undecided, right, and you have a situation where it's like on one side you're killing someone, and on the other, some people just are extremely, put in a bad position, then it's kind of like, what do you choose? And I was like, I kind of get that argument as well. But like I said, I think that either way it goes, even if you went to a pro-life extreme, of it is a child, I guess that's not a good word to use as pro-life extreme. But I mean, if you go to the point of saying it is a child and abortion should never happen, even if you had that, I still think that irregardless, that you cannot argue that it isn't a self-defense claim if the life of the mother is at risk. You know what I mean? When you have
So
like really risky pregnancies or
right. So that's the messy situation that we're talking about. Pregnancy and what it does to the woman's body is not insignificant. You've seen it for yourself. It is not insignificant. The risk of to the woman's life, even with a perfectly normal and healthy pregnancy, is still there. Not just her health, but her mental health as well. You have a lot of women that go through everything from postpartum depression to even PTSD with regards to relatively normal deliveries. So first, you have to acknowledge the fact that this is not insignificant. This is a major development and change that is happening to the woman's body.
oh yeah.
Now, when we talk now, I'll be honest with you, I don't agree with calling a fetus a child or a baby. Those are very emotional terms, and they are important to understand the difference between what an emotional connection is to the pregnancy versus what scientifically is happening. If a woman said that she was pregnant with a baby, I would never tell her, actually, scientifically, that's incorrect. I would never do that. That's an emotional connection that she is making. Fantastic. That is important to her. And if she needs that word to describe the situation that she's going through, that is absolutely great. But when you start getting into terms and you want to put this blanket term of murdering a baby or murdering a child, we have to understand the difference between murder and withhold. And when we get into a lot of these messy situations, we want to put this blanket over the situation and we want to say every single abortion is bad and every single abortion is terrible and every single abortion is murdering a baby, or is done irresponsibly or shouldn't happen. And like I said, I've had a friend who needed to get a much needed surgery. And so she terminated her pregnancy in order to get a surgery. And then she got pregnant almost immediately after and has continued to have a family. I know other women who have gotten abortions for, when the situation was such that there was a defect and it was not worth her mental health in order to carry to term, and that there was zero chance of the fetus being compatible with life.
Right.
For us
That's
to
also,
step
like I said,
in,
even when I was hardcore pro-life, I want to point that out that I've always actually had that position because it's like
right?
I don't understand why anyone would want that. Like
But that's the
that
thing,
is
is
a
that
position that I've asked very, very, very many that have said they have that position, and I can't really get a straight answer that makes
as
any sense.
soon as you start becoming pro-life, you start making that decision for the pregnant woman, right? As soon as you become pro-life, you dictate to her when she is allowed to release herself of the responsibility of carrying this pregnancy. And you dictate to her what she must endure and what are her options. And so you can be completely against elective abortions. You can be completely against abortions overall and still be pro-choice simply because you recognize that this is an unfair situation, that there is no law that can make up for the biology of pregnancy. And therefore, you're going to take a step back and say, you know what, medically, I want this person to be able to make the best medical decision for themselves. And that decision is best between her and her doctor without me jumping in trying to tell her what her options are. And that can go for so many different aspects of her health. I'm not saying whether you should be pro-choice or whether you should be pro-life. I'm just saying that pro-choice encompasses people that hate abortions, and that is okay. hating
Right.
abortions is not a reason
So
to
like
immediately be
basically,
pro-life.
so basically we can all say that the people who are saying that, like, even if you're gonna have like some issue like that when you have a medical necessity, obviously, it's like if you know, if you're not even, honestly, in my opinion, if you're not on that page, in my opinion, I don't really think you're being um what's the word,
Realistic,
yeah,
humane.
not even so much realistic. I think I don't even think you're being reasonable. That's the word. I don't think you're being reasonable. And I'd say the same thing when people are talking about these born alive, you know, where
They're
these
not
babies, where
compatible with
they're,
life.
well, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking
Oh,
about where you have these babies that are born and they're like, well, they don't really have, or, you know, or they like, they were trying to do an abortion and they delivered the baby and the baby actually didn't die because it was really early and they tried to deliver the baby and they just kind of leave it there to die in some places.
oh,
And then
when
you
they're
have,
not providing. Yeah, no, I don't agree with that either. When they're not
yeah, and I
providing.
think that,
So when
yeah, I
we
think
when we
that is
start going
crazy.
into those late term abortions, I think that the only standard that I would really support is not whether or not the woman can terminate her pregnancy, but the delivery options available, and that to withhold. I've never heard of them withholding life-saving support from a delivered fetus. I've never heard of that. I don't believe that that's common whatsoever. As it is, third term abortions, every single one is freaking heartbreaking. Absolutely massively heartbreaking. Nobody walks away from a third term abortion with everything intact, with their mental health, with everything. And that's actually, when I take a look at that, I think that there was one there. I actually used to be pro-life, and even as I started slipping towards pro-choice, I always had this thing against third term abortions. I always thought that they were unnecessary and that sort of thing, until I actually started learning and reading and experiencing what third term abortions were, the cases that were selected for them. I I could not even find myself in a position to support banning these women from going through with that. Only because I don't think that the situation that you're describing, where they would actually deliver a fetus and just let it lie there till it died, I don't think that that's actually happening. I don't think that that doesn't,
I know,
not
I
withholding
think it was
treatment
the
from.
Virginian, I think it was the Virginia governor that was talking about it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I like, this is something I have not done a huge amount of research, so I'm speaking a little bit out of my butt. I know that the Virginia governor was referencing a bill that they were trying to pass in Virginia for something like that.
I live
Um,
in Virginia. I haven't heard of that one. The ban
and
that
they were
the
calling
governor's
it
been
quote
talking about
unquote
was.
after birth abortion.
Yeah, that doesn't exist. If it's after birth, that's not an abortion. Withholding
Right, and that's
treatment
kind of what I'm
from a,
saying. Is
because at
that
that
is
point, that is a
disgusting.
baby. No, at that point, that is a baby, and you're withholding treatment from a baby. That is not within the discussion of terminating pregnancies at
And the
all
same thing, and
whatsoever.
I actually agree with also the partial birth abortion that they had at one point. I think that was also quite barbaric, where they would
See,
deliver the head and then stick a needle in the head and liquefy the
yeah,
brain.
I'm not. I'm not as familiar with those ones. That doesn't sound right.
It's like the baby is literally coming out. Like, just file some adoption papers at that point.
Yeah, I don't
In my
understand that
opinion,
one. I'm
I don't understand killing when you could just give it someone that wanted it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like, well, there's all these kids in adoption, you know, agencies right now, and I'm like, well, not to stand. I know it's fucked up, but it is the truth. But babies don't last long in you know, waiting for adoption. The kids that are sitting in adoption, there's these older kids, and it is screwed up. They need to have homes. People do need to do something. But to be truthful, It's not like these people who want babies go up there and go, oh, you won't have any babies? All right, I'll take a 14-year-old. No,
Yeah.
they wait. They put themselves on a waiting list and they wait.
I'm not
So,
as familiar with those, but yeah, that sounds absolutely atrocious. But again, I'm not familiar with that aspect of it. And when it comes down to it, even if we outlawed one procedure or another, ultimately, I don't think that it should be the position of the government to go in and to say, which is, your life isn't in danger yet. You're not allowed to terminate your pregnancy yet, because of this arbitrary indicator, either be it the pain test or the heartbeat test, which actually, doesn't weigh as heavily in the scientific arenas and the medical arenas as they do in the emotional arenas. And so for women to have to conform to other people's emotions and their
right.
acceptance of the
Yeah.
situation, again, is just feeding into what women have been struggling against this whole time, which is, why is it that, okay, regardless of all these other aspects, when it comes down to is, you have to emotionally be okay with what I do with my body. That is something that is just so old and comes up just time after time after time. And
Right.
it
And
just,
I hear
it's
what you're saying, but just
boring.
again, the I get where you're coming from, but to an extent, it's a function of where you're coming from, why you say you have a problem with what I do with my body. And I don't think, I mean, I'm sure some people are just like that. They, no, I don't want you to get no tattoos, no piercings. No. Yeah, some people do actually
Oh,
want to control your body, but I would say a large majority of them aren't really worried about your body in this case. They're worried about the body of a child that they think, they think this is a child,
something
not a
that they
fetus.
think is a
You
child,
see,
right?
you see what I'm saying? So that's what the body that they're worried about.
No,
So
I understand that too,
again,
sir. I can empathize with that. My pushback to that is that it's always going to be something, regardless, whenever you talk to people throughout any specific, point in time, why they were trying to control a woman's body, they always had a reason. They always had an excuse. And there will always be an
true.
excuse to try to control a woman's body. And so it happens to be, and it always sounds noble to the person who's waving that excuse around. They think they're in the right. And yet it still
You're
comes down
preaching
to the
right now,
same old
libertarian
thing.
stuff. This is exactly what libertarians say about all power.
Yeah.
Of course, they're going to
No,
do something good with it.
right. So, it's not that long ago that birth control wasn't even allowed, or that you needed your husband's approval for it. Very noble reasons why, right? Because your husband was supposed to have some sort of right to to your reproductivity, right? To your reproduction. And so if you take a look at that, they thought that your husband had the right to your body. There were times when it wasn't even legal. You couldn't have your husband held accountable for raping you because he was your husband. He had a right to your body. Um, and throughout time, there's always been some sort of noble cause to say that somebody
Yeah.
else has a right to a woman's body.
Yeah,
And you
Hitler
can
wasn't going
tell,
around saying, I want to do this because I hate people.
right?
He said, I want to do this because I'm going to make everything great.
Right. So there's always been some sort of justification as to why somebody has a right to a woman's body. And it is going to continue. So now, instead of even saying the fetus has a right to the body, they're saying the baby does, the child does. And that when a woman extends her autonomy and she says, I don't want my body to go through this, it's murder. And when she said that, when she didn't want to, reproduce for her husband, it was considered not blasphemy per se, but it was an admonishment to her husband, to the institute of marriage, to America. every single time a woman tries to express autonomy over her body, she is threatening some part of the institution. And when you look at this as just being a continuation of that pattern, it fits right in. People think that they're noble in this one, but they always think that they are.
Well, when they fix the incubators, we'll just have the problem solved and not have to worry about it anymore.
Oh, absolutely. Donate that away. Go for it. I don't think that anybody would have a problem just sitting there saying, absolutely donate this to somebody who cannot conceive. Here you go.
Hey, yeah, no, we don't do that no more. We just take it out and put it in this here pod.
There you go.
And I
Problem
honestly
solved.
see a
Go
lot
for
of
it.
women just saying, "Hey, no, I want to keep it, but put it in the pod."
Right.
I'm
Oh, can
not
you
trying to do
imagine?
this for the next 9 months.
Right. How glorious would
We
that be?
are talking about the end of a lot of natural oppression for women, and that's what the birth control pill was. And and that's something that I also say too to a lot of people is like, when we stop trying to oppress each other, we can focus a lot more on the natural oppression in the world.
Mhm.
Some people are born with crazy diseases. Women have certain physical challenges, men have certain physical challenges, just because of the way that their physiology is. And there's all these different things that happen, like cancer and all that. I just think that we could focus a lot more on the things that are naturally oppressing us from just nature. You know,
Mhm.
if we didn't have to worry about the next guy coming and trying to do it.
Mhm.
And like I said, there is a solution, and I think the solution honestly is going to come in technology, but I still think that it's a very big question to try to answer, for the future. Same as the question of how much intelligence denotes personhood, you know? And I think that's a very big question that needs to be answered. It's not just important for this question, it's important for what if we, find life in the universe? How do we know that's an alien that's, another person and not an alien that's a cow of the alien variety, just
Mhm.
an animal? Should it have rights? What about artificial intelligence? At what point do we recreate slavery if we give them too much intelligence? You know what I mean? At what point should we have to give them a choice, or it's no longer moral?
Oh, I hear you. I have no input into this
You see what I'm saying? It
branch.
is a question. I'm just saying it is a question for the future, and I'm like, these are the deeper questions that like I said, I feel like we could get to if we could move past a lot of the hate that we have. So that's kind of my point to a lot of you guys. That's all, in the group, and listen to the podcast generally, is that hating each other is really not a good way to get anything done. We have to understand each other, and kind of get it and realize that what's understandable is not always what's justified. They're not always the same thing. If a man comes home and his wife's cheating on him with another man, and he shoots her, and he shoots the guy, like we could all go, okay, yeah, that's understandable, but it's definitely not justified. You know, I understand why he was that angry. I understand why he would go to that length, but it's still wrong that he killed somebody, killed two people. That's wrong,
Mhm.
not justice. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So just because you are trying to understand someone else's beliefs does not mean you're justifying them. It doesn't mean that you believe in them, and it doesn't mean you agree with them. But you do have to understand because understanding is what takes away the hate. You know, when you're talking to your friend and y'all just had a big fight and they're like, hey man, this is how I felt. That's why I was yelling at you and I was being like this. You know what I mean? That's why you feel better afterward. It's because now you understand what was going on. They understand what was going on with you. You don't even have to come to the same conclusion. But if you feel like you were understood, you calm down. They feel like they were understood. They calm down. You know?
All right. We've been going at this for a couple hours. You're going to have to, I think you're going to have to split this up. Maybe
Eh,
do a little bit of editing.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun. But it's no big deal. We'll have a part 1, we'll have a part 2, or maybe I'll just put it all in there. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
You
I think as
know,
long as
but
you mark where the
thanks for
question
listening.
sorry.
But go ahead. What's the question? Go ahead.
Oh,
I'm
no,
sorry.
I was going to say, maybe just mark where the questions are as you went through them, and then just talk briefly about what we discussed. And I think that would be really great for people to follow.
Definitely. I might do that.
Yeah.
Just do like little timestamps.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I definitely appreciate you taking the time
No trouble. It was my pleasure.
And coming over here to try to explain and like I said, I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen and try to see how we explore some of the ideas that we explore and see a little bit about how we try to moderate the group in a way that's fair to everyone. You know, but thanks for tuning in.
All right. Bye, everybody. I'm trying to stop recording. Let me stop. Receiving email notification when okay.